field thinning on both the liberal and moderate sides of the Democratic Party. We get details from Bloomberg Washington Bureau Chief Craig Gordon in Manchester.
You know, Bernie is the undisputed sort of leader on the left. In the centrist camp, you have really three. You have Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, obviously won Iowa. And there's a third name familiar to all of us, and that's Michael Bloomberg. Chaos is Michael Bloomberg's friend. If there were a strong winner in Iowa and a strong winner in New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, by the time we all get to Super Tuesday on March 3rd, it might be very hard for sort of somebody new to kind of poke their way into that top tier. That's the exact opposite of what's happening.
So far, Michael Bloomberg has polled at 10% or higher in 2 national polls, one more double-digit showing in a national survey, and he would be eligible for upcoming debates. And a quick disclaimer, we should note that Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio.
While Sanders and Buttigieg were the big winners, a strong third-place finish from Amy Klobuchar promises a big boost to her candidacy. Joel Payne is a Democratic strategist who worked on the Clinton campaign.
It's obvious that she helped herself with that debate. It's obvious that Biden cratering, a lot of that support is going over to Klobuchar. I think that the establishment class of the party, what I would call the moderate establishment class, is still looking for a champion. They haven't found it in Biden. I think that some moderates are probably not completely satisfied with Buttigieg yet.
Now Klobuchar faces questions about whether she has the money and organization to take her campaign to Nevada, South Carolina, and the Super Tuesday states. Her campaign raised $3 million in the days after Friday's debate and has plans to expand her staff.
While Klobuchar was the big gainer last night, Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren were the ones losing ground. Bloomberg's Ms. Relena Agolfapulu was with the Warren campaign last night in Manchester.
It really seemed as though it was a terrible night for the Warren campaign, but her speech was way more enthusiastic than one would expect. It was definitely not a concession speech. She made clear that she's here for the long haul, saying that she has an organization that's going to keep her through Super Tuesday.
In the meantime, Joe Biden left New Hampshire before the results were in, choosing instead to head to South Carolina ahead of that state's primary coming up in 2.5 weeks. A defeat there would effectively knock Biden out of the race.
South Carolina could also be key for Pete Buttigieg. It's a more diverse state than Iowa and New Hampshire, and polls show Buttigieg with weak support among minorities. We get more from Bloomberg Politics editor Wendy Benjaminson.
He doesn't poll well with non-white voters. He's getting some bad press for having, as mayor of South Bend, fired a black police chief and a black fire chief. On the other hand, you get momentum. Winning proves electability. Pete Buttigieg came out of Iowa with more delegates than Bernie Sanders. The centrist minorities will start looking at him.
And after Iowa and New Hampshire, here's where the delegates count stands. Buttigieg leads with 22. Bernie Sanders has 21 delegates. Elizabeth Warren has 8. Amy Klobuchar has 7. And Joe Biden so far has 6 delegates. It's still early, though. Iowa and New Hampshire amount to just 1.6% of all Democratic delegates. Futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up about 11 points. Dow futures up 106. NASDAQ futures up 43. The 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds. The yield 1.61%. Yield on the 2-year 1.43%. In Asia, the Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.7%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong jumped about 0.9%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:07 on Wall Street. Michael Barr has even more on last night's New Hampshire primary and the rest of what's happening around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Bernie Sanders says his win in New Hampshire marks the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
We're going to Nevada. We're going to South Carolina. We're going to win those states as well.
Runner-up Pete Buttigieg.
I know that we all share the spirit that we heard from some of our volunteers at a poll site earlier today who welcomed a competing candidate with chance of vote blue no matter who. We are on the same team.
Amy Klobuchar touted her third-place finish to her supporters.
Well, there are still ballots left to count. We have beaten the odds every step of the way.
Meanwhile, entrepreneur Andrew Yang is ending the presidential campaign he built on the promise of a universal basic income of $1,000 a month for every American over the age of 18. Yang says he did not foresee broad enough support in upcoming primary states to win delegates and declined to endorse another candidate. Turning to other news now, all 4 U.S. prosecutors who backed a long prison stay for Trump ally Roger Stone have resigned from witness tampering and obstruction of justice case. As Bloomberg's Bob Moon reports, it's a stunning rebuke to a Justice Department that cut the recommended sentence by more than half after a critical tweet from the president.
The self-described political dirty trickster was found by Robert Mueller's investigation and the jury that convicted him to have lied under oath to Congress 5 separate times in protecting his longtime friend Donald Trump. It wasn't Stone's actions that Trump condemned, but the 7 to 9 year sentence recommended by prosecutors.
I thought the recommendation was ridiculous.
While Trump insists he didn't pressure the Justice Department, he attacked prosecutors via Twitter and wouldn't say if he'll consider commuting the sentence entirely, outraging Democrats, including Senator Richard Blumenthal, yet again.
Absolutely stomach-turning.
Republican leader Mitch McConnell, on the other hand, declined to say anything.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on that.
Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Seba Standard Poodle was selected as Best in Show at the 144th edition of the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show in New York last night. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mike Lamar. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Got all the races covered. Thank you, Michael. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashour.
Nathan, as Mets pitchers and catchers worked out in Port St. Lucie, their Yankee counterparts officially report today in Tampa. The Yanks heavy favorites to win their first pennant in 11 years. Not only due to the addition of Garrett Cole, but the subtraction of Cole in Houston and Mookie Betts in Boston. The Red Sox finally have their new manager, Ron Renneke, as an interim tag. He was Alex Cora's bench coach. Cora, of course, fired in the sign-stealing scandal. And now that we know technology was used to steal signs, the question is, how do teams prevent their signs from being stolen? Coach Girardi has taken over as manager of the Phillies.
Started addressing how we protect our stuff and our signs, and talk to catchers and pitchers and plans that we have in spring training to start incorporating some of this stuff so it's not foreign when we get to the first day of the season.
Girardi back managing. His last game with the Yanks was that 2017 Game 7 loss in Houston when signs were being stolen. All three local hockey teams on the ice. Rangers won 4-1 at Winnipeg. Chris Kreider scored in each of the first 2 periods. Numbers 21 and 22 on the year. The Islanders blew a 3-0 lead, but scored twice. Final minute beat Philadelphia 5-3. Isles in 10 games in Brooklyn, yet to lose in regulation. Devils were beaten by Florida 5-3. Scary moment in Anaheim. Jay Baumeister of the St. Louis Blues suffered a cardiac episode. He collapsed while on the bench. He is said to be doing better, but they stopped the game in the first period. Knicks tonight home for Washington. The Nets will host red-hot Toronto, who's won 15 straight. Final games before the All-Star break. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashour. Nathan.
And John, it seems House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was on the losing end of a Super Bowl bet with Missouri Congressman Emanuel Cleaver after 49ers fell to the Chiefs in the big game. So yesterday, Pelosi, who picked her hometown Niners, delivered Ghirardelli chocolates, almonds, and pistachios to Cleaver. If she had won, Pelosi would have gotten Kansas City barbecue. It's a good bet either way. S&P futures higher by 11 points right now. Dow futures up 111. NASDAQ futures higher by 44 points this morning after the Democratic New Hampshire primary. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, number one in professional development support, and number one in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
25. At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey.
Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us.
We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer.
And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Aslinda Amin on Bloomberg Markets.
With me is David Sale, Bell Helicopter Asia, managing director, by the way. It is his first Singapore Air Show, having been posted in the Middle East prior to this. Good to have you with us, David. I mean, we talked about how we're expecting an increase in helicopter sales. Why is that? What's driving that?
For us in the region, it really comes down to the parapublic market and the government markets that we're looking at. I don't know if we'd say a large increase, but we do see a positive outcome over the next couple of years. So I think that's where we're looking at for us as the bigger public market that's in Asia Pacific.
Can you quantify that increase? And is it pretty much driven by government spending?
Yeah, it'll be done by government spending. So the challenge with quantifying it is that sometimes you'll have a big deal that'll take place in 1 year, and then it may take a couple years again for that government to purchase again. So some of the governments around here, 2020, 2021 will be some of the bigger purchases.
Where in Asia?
So specifically, we just had a tender come out of Australia for between 16 and 20 aircraft. So that will be something we'll be focused on here.
Any anecdotal evidence that the coronavirus could affect sentiment or growth in the next 12 months?
As it's still brand new to all of us here, all the team is trying to figure out what's going to happen here. Obviously in Singapore, China, right now we're following, we have offices there that have had to close.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app. Or check your local cable listings, markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And up here in Moscow, European stocks are gaining with U.S. stock index futures and crude oil rallying amid signs the spread of the coronavirus in China is slowing and investor optimism the global economy can weather the storm. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 12 points. Dow futures up 115. NASDAQ futures up 45. The DAX in Germany's up 0.7%. 10-year Treasury down 5/32, yield 1.61%. Yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.5% or 76 cents at $50.70 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.1% at $1.70 to $15.6840 an ounce. The euro 1.0920 against the dollar. British pound 1.2986. and the yen is at 110.01. Cisco Systems among companies scheduled to report earnings today, and Bed Bath & Beyond is down almost 24% this morning after reporting that a key measure of sales contracted in December and January. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Joe Biden has brought his wounded presidential campaign to South Carolina, staking his hopes for a comeback on the loyalty of black voters after a dismal finish in the New Hampshire primary magnified his disappointing finish in Iowa. Biden says, "I know this is going to be the fight of my life." Bernie Sanders came out the victor in last night's New Hampshire primary. With more, here's Bloomberg's John Tucker in this live report.
Michael, Bernie Sanders claimed 25% of the vote. Pete Buttigieg scored 24%. Buttigieg losing to Sanders by about 4,000 votes. Amy Klobuchar's strong showing claimed 19% of the vote, while Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden slid to single digits with 9% and 8% respectively. Weak showings from Andrew Yang and the former Senator Michael Bennet led both those candidates to exit the race. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Michael.
Thank you very much, sir. In the NHL, the Islanders and Rangers won. The Devils lost. In the NBA, the Celtics lost. The Wizards won. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. We're coming up to 5:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's get more now on the results of the New Hampshire primary and where the Democratic race stands now. Greg Valliere is with us, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist at AGF Investments. Interesting, coming out of New Hampshire, the result almost mirrors the delegate count when you have Bernie Sanders leading Pete Buttigieg in the Granite State by 1 percentage point, and Buttigieg leading the delegate count over Sanders by 1. Where does this leave things for the Democrats, Greg?
It's really muddled, Nathan. I think this goes on well through the spring. In fact, I've got to say this morning, Fearless Forecast, we'll probably have a brokered convention in Milwaukee in the middle of July.
It's interesting, though, when you come out of New Hampshire and see the moderate vote, if you want to term it that way, essentially splitting between Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar. And when you add the numbers, I mean, that's a pretty strong percentage, something like 45% to Bernie Sanders, 26%.
Good point. I think that the moderates are more numerous in the party, even in a liberal state like New Hampshire, at least from the Democrats' standpoint. I think that the moderates showed they have real strength.
So who do the moderates coalesce around at this point?
Well, you'd have to say it's going to be a fellow named Bloomberg. I know you have to do your disclaimer, but I do think, yep. But I do think that Bloomberg is the guy to watch. He's got an issue with stop and frisk. It's going to be out there for quite a while. But I think that with this kind of money and this kind of gridlock, it's a wide open lane for Mike Bloomberg, who will, I think, do pretty well on Super Tuesday, March 3rd.
Michael Bloomberg, of course, as you mentioned, is the founder and majority owner of the company that owns this radio station, Bloomberg LP. Amy Klobuchar, with that strong showing, can she build on that momentum with the type of resources that she has? At this point, they're quite a bit lower than some of the other top-tier candidates.
Yeah, she needs more money. Everybody does. But I think more importantly, we go now from retail politics to wholesale politics. She could meet just about everyone in New Hampshire. She's not going to be able to do that for California, Texas, and the other big states on March 3rd. So she has an uphill fight. I've said all along, I think she is the odds-on favorite to be the running mate for the eventual nominee.
Is there an uphill fight for Joe Biden? He sort of termed it that way in New Hampshire. He's counting on the strong poll support that he still has in South Carolina by heading there last night. Can he maintain that now?
You know, never say never, and I suppose he could finish first or second in Nevada and then maybe win South Carolina and get a plurality of delegates on Super Tuesday, March 3rd. There's still a really narrow lane for him, but you know, it's worth noting, he has never won in 3 campaigns. He's never won a primary.
And we've heard in the past that no one has won without coming either in first or second place. in Iowa and New Hampshire. Does that make this now a two-person race, notwithstanding Michael Bloomberg, who's going to be competing on Super Tuesday and beyond? Does that make it now a two-person race between Sanders and Buttigieg?
It could. Rules like that are made to be broken, but it does look to me as if we're going to have a two-person race, Bernie against somebody else. And who will that somebody else be? Well, could be Buttigieg, could be Klobuchar, but again, I think Bloomberg, with his resources, cannot be ruled out.
What about Elizabeth Warren? Disappointing finishes in both the early contests. She sounds determined to carry on. Can she?
No, I think that money is going to become a real problem for her. A very, very disappointing night for her in her next door state of New Hampshire. My guess is that she probably will drop out in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
In our last couple of seconds here, how much pressure is on the rest of the party, the so-called establishment of the party, to take on Sanders, even with some of the messaging we're hearing that, no matter who becomes the nominee, they're all going to unite against Donald Trump?
Well, the party has a real nightmare, Nathan, and that is that if Sanders is the nominee, he could lose 40 states, and it could really drag down Democrats who are running for Senate, House, governorships. It's a very, very unnerving scenario for Democrats, and I think that's one of the reasons why Sanders didn't do quite as well last night as he had hoped.
Greg Valliere, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist, AGF Investments. Always good having you on. Thanks for getting up early for us this morning on Bloomberg Daybreak. S&P futures higher by 11 points. Dow futures up 112. NASDAQ futures up 44 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The early U.S. stock indicators looked strong this morning, pointing to a higher Wall Street open amid signs the spread of the coronavirus in China is easing. The S&P and the NASDAQ inched to new record highs again yesterday. The Dow was little changed. Fed Chair Jay Powell will be back before U.S. lawmakers today. In remarks yesterday, he remained positive about the U.S. economic outlook, but said the Fed is keeping a close eye on fallout from the coronavirus epidemic. Bed Bath & Beyond would like to move beyond a sales slump, but that's not happening. Shares of the retailer fell sharply after it reported a key measure of sales were down more than 5% in December and January. Digital sales were a bright spot, growing about 20%. Your newer Honda Odyssey minivan may be part of a new recall. The company's action covers EXL, Touring, and Elite models from the 2018 through 2020 model years and stems from a wiring problem that could spark a fire. There have been 3 reports of fires, but no injuries. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black, fit it with privacy glass, a full leather ebony interior, then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black, understated, has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar, Land Rover, above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey.
Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean this city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maltesers presents If Dating App Chats Were Real Life Chats.
Amber, damn, you hot. Glad we matched.
Me too. You're definitely my type.
I gotta ask, did it hurt?
Oh, I'll see where this is going.
When you fell from heaven, Amber? Yo, Amber, 'cause you're an angel.
Snore. Ditch the apps this Valentine's and swipe yourself some Maltesers.
Rita's Rowdy Enchiladas.
Every time the kids are together, it's always the same. Never a moment's peace. Didn't take me long to work out the trick, though. Shredded chicken and black bean enchiladas with lime, oregano, and my little secret. A bit of smoke and spice with chipotle paste. Hear that? Never failed yet.
Make your own Rowdy Enchiladas with Tesco British Chicken. Food Love Stories, brought to you by Tesco.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
And we're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. The results are in, and Bernie Sanders is the winner of the New Hampshire primary.
This victory here is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
While Sanders won the state, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar also emerged with strong showings. For more, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning. Pete Buttigieg scored a close second of the primary with 24% of the vote compared to 25% for Sanders. Just about 4,000 votes separate the two candidates. Amy Klobuchar claimed 19% of the vote, while Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden both slid to single digits. Warren came in at 9%, with Joe Biden at 8%. A week's showings from Andrew Yang and former Senator Michael Bennet led both of those candidates to exit the race. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Both Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden failed to reach the 15% vote threshold to earn delegates. Biden's campaign appears to be in a free fall. We get more from Bloomberg Bureau Chief Craig Gordon.
If your entire calling card is electability, I'm the one that could beat Donald Trump, and you're getting not even 10% in a state that you should do fine in, that's just crushing.
Biden left New Hampshire before the results were in, choosing instead to head to South Carolina ahead of the state's primary. A defeat there would effectively knock him out of the race.
Elizabeth Warren, meantime, is pushing on, though a viable path to the convention appears narrow. Joel Payne is a Democratic strategist who worked on the Clinton campaign.
Hers is now a path that is dependent upon other things that are out of her control. Buttigieg has to slip. Klobuchar has to slip. Sanders has to slip in order for Warren to rise.
The biggest gainer on the night appears to be Amy Klobuchar, who's primed to build on her momentum from Friday's debate and last night's finish. More from Bloomberg Politics editor Wendy Benjaminson.
No one thought she was going to get out of Iowa. So she has raised $3 million since Friday night's debate. She's got another debate Wednesday in Las Vegas. She does very well in these debates, and that could give her some momentum.
After Iowa and New Hampshire, Pete Buttigieg leads the delegate field with 22. Bernie Sanders has 21. Elizabeth Warren has 8 delegates. Amy Klobuchar has 7. Joe Biden so far has 6 delegates. But it's still early. Iowa and New Hampshire amount to just 1.6% of all Democratic delegates.
Futures this morning are higher with S&P futures up 11 points. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Thank you, Karen. 5:33 on Wall Street. Let's bring in Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Senator Bernie Sanders celebrated his New Hampshire victory with supporters in Manchester.
Now, our campaign is not just about beating Trump. It is about transforming this country.
Meanwhile, Pete Buttigieg supporters chanted President Pete during his rally in Nashua.
We also know better than to try to defeat such a disruptive president by relying on the same Washington framework and mindset. After all, if today's Washington were serving America well, a guy like Donald Trump would never have come within cheating distance of the Oval Office in the first place.
Amy Klobuchar told supporters her surprise third-place finish shows her campaign is defying the odds. We have Bloomberg Radio team coverage of last night's primary, starting with Kim Kerrigan at Bloomberg, New Hampshire primary headquarters in New Hampshire.
On the Democratic side, it was a big win for Senator Bernie Sanders last night, with former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg coming in second and Senator Amy Klobuchar in third. Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden came in fourth and fifth, respectively. On the Republican side, it was a win, as expected, for President Donald Trump. I'm Kim Kerrigan at Bloomberg, New Hampshire primary headquarters in Manchester. Now here's Bloomberg's Ann Mostu with the Pete Buttigieg campaign in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Kim, this crowd of Pete Buttigieg supporters is ecstatic, and despite his second-place finish, hopeful he can still win the party's final nomination. There's a lot riding on the New Hampshire results. The Democratic primary is about to move into states where Buttigieg hasn't really broken in, with larger numbers of Latino and Black voters. I'm Ann Mostu with the Pete Buttigieg campaign in Nashua. Now we continue our Bloomberg team coverage with Janet Wu, who's in Manchester with the Elizabeth Warren campaign.
And Elizabeth Warren shocked us all by coming on stage at 8:20 p.m., far earlier than expected, with only a few precincts reporting. But it was enough to show she would not win this night. She initially called for unity, but then called for a renewed fight, saying her campaign is built for the long haul and she is just getting started. And then instead of disappearing, she stayed to take every single selfie that was requested. With the Warren campaign in Manchester, New Hampshire, I'm Janet Wu, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Turning to news outside of New Hampshire now, all 4 U.S. government prosecutors who backed a long prison stay for Trump ally Roger Stone resigned from the case after the Justice Department cut his recommended sentence by more than half. President Trump had tweeted earlier that a possible 9-year prison sentence was very unfair. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. 5:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, Yankee pitchers and catchers report today in Tampa. Met pitchers and catchers worked out yesterday in Port St. Lucie under the direction of new manager Luis Rojas, who was asked about the health of Yoenis Cespedes.
You know, he's running, he's hitting. I've had conversations with him, but we don't have the timeline yet. I mean, the performance staff is working on his progression, and we're going from there.
So opening day hasn't been ruled out yet.
We don't know. I mean, there's no timeline yet. Once I get it, I will, happy to share it with you guys.
Ankle and foot injuries kept Cespedes out all of last season. Only played 38 games the year before that. His return could be a key to the Mets' fortunes. Red Sox finally made it official, promoting Ron Renicky to interim manager, but he won't be managing Mookie Betts and David Price.
Certainly, those two guys are, they're great players, and you hope that the guys you replace them with become great players. And whether it's this year, whether it's a few years, you just keep moving on.
Betts and Price both just traded to the Dodgers. Stanley Cup playoffs begin in 2 months. Rangers and Devils on the outside right now. Blue Shirts did win last night in Winnipeg, 4-1. Chris Kreider scored twice. Devils had at least a point in 6 straight games, but they lost to Florida 5-3. The Islanders do appear headed to the postseason. They beat Philadelphia 5-3, snapped a 3-all tie with a Ryan Pulock goal with 41 seconds left. College hoops, Syracuse lost to NC State. Fordham lost by 30 at Davidson. San Diego State won again and is now 25-0 with a Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
Thanks, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now with a cover on the economic impact from the coronavirus outbreak. Also in this week's issue, a crude joke may have taken a bite out of Ken Fisher's firm, but the money manager himself is doing just fine. Sabrina Wilmer wrote the story for Bloomberg Business Week.
This story kind of takes a step back and looks at how he built his business. He's quadrupled assets since 2009. And a lot of that has to do with his marketing and sales operation.
Read more on this and other stories in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now, online at businessweek.com, and terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go. Listen to Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, and watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device at youtube.com. Search Bloomberg Global News. 5:38 on Wall Street. Time now for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Ed Corey. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, Nathan. Under Armour says it may close its New York flagship store in order to focus on smaller, more profitable stores and online sales. Shares of the athletic apparel company plummeted Tuesday after it said it anticipates a big financial hit from the viral outbreak in China. New Jersey's biggest health insurer will have a new CEO in April. Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield says Gary St. Hilaire will succeed Kevin Conlon as president and CEO. This comes as the newer company seeks to change the type of corporation it is to give it more flexibility. And a plan to upgrade a southeastern Connecticut port so it can become a staging area for the offshore wind industry has been approved. Members of the Connecticut Port Authority Tuesday voting unanimously to authorize a $157 million state pier project in New London. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
Thanks, Ed. 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KTRH in Houston. Boeing will resume production of the 737 MAX before the plane is allowed back in the air.
I'm Tom Busby, and on KYW in Philadelphia, I'll be reporting on the Wawa chain, now trying out a dinner menu.
I'm Caroline Hepker on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on London mayoral candidate Rory Stewart asking to sleep over in the homes of Londoners to better understand the needs of the city.
I'm Ed Corey on KFBK in Sacramento. I'm reporting Wells Fargo's new CEO is dividing the bank's business lines into 5 units.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. We're also watching Lyft shares in the pre-market going in reverse after the ride-hailing service disappointed investors with its quarterly earnings and forecast for the year. Lyft did not provide updated guidance on when it would turn a profit. Lyft shares are down 4.3% in early trading. Futures pointed higher. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard?
or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey.
Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean this city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
The Grand DFS sale featuring Wallace.
Hello?
And Gromit.
Well, say hello, lad.
Every sofa is made to order.
By a speedy Sofa-matic machine?
By hand.
Oh, suit yourself.
So you can have your sofa exactly how you want it.
Made of cheese?
Not that exactly.
Oh, probably a good thing, eh, Gromit? It'd be gone in a jiffy.
The Grand DFS sale is now on.
How about the cushion made of cheese? Or a footstool?
Rita's Rowdy Enchiladas.
Every time the kids are together, it's always the same. Never a moment's peace. Didn't take me long to work out the trick, though. Shredded chicken and black bean enchiladas with lime, oregano, and my little secret. A bit of smoke and spice with chipotle paste. Hear that? Never failed yet.
Make your own Rowdy Enchiladas with Tesco British Chicken. Food Love Stories, brought to you by Tesco.
Where are we?
The New Forest.
But I thought we only had the Mini Countryman booked for a test drive. We can't stay here.
We're not going to.
This isn't exactly what I meant.
Relax. With Mini's new 48-hour test drive, you can use the Countryman for exactly what it's built for. Exploring. Plus, it's an SUV, the largest Mini in the range, so you can pack loads more in.
Great. Where next?
Well, you know how you've always wanted to try kayaking?
The Mini Countryman 48-hour test drive. Visit mini.co.uk to book yours. Mini. Who's in? Test drive subject to status and availability. Terms and conditions apply. Participating Mini retailers only.
News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, New Hampshire primary.
Together, I have no doubt that we will defeat Donald Trump. Thank you all very much.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has won the New Hampshire primary. The 78-year-old, a self-described Democratic socialist, beat back a strong challenge from Pete Buttigieg.
He congratulated Senator Sanders on his victory, saying he has admired him since he was a teenager. But later in his speech, Buttigieg went on the attack again.
We can't defeat the most divisive president in modern American history by tearing down anybody who doesn't agree with us 100% of the time.
Steve Kastenbaum in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Senator Amy Klobuchar finished third, rounding out the field Senator Elizabeth Warren and former Vice President Joe Biden.
There's no limit to what we can get done in the next 4 years. But first, we have to beat Donald Trump.
Andrew Yang and Michael Bennet have ended their campaigns. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks are gaining with U.S. stock index futures. Crude oil rallying amid signs the spread of the coronavirus in China is slowing and investor optimism the global economy can weather the storm. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 11 points this morning. Dow futures up 112. NASDAQ futures up 44. The DAX in Germany's up 0.7%. 10-year Treasury down 2/30 seconds. Yield 1.60%. Yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.5% or 76 cents at $50.70 a barrel. COMEX gold little change up 30 cents at $15.70.40 an ounce. The euro 1.0917 against the dollar. British pound 1.2981 and the yen at 109.95. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, after a disappointing finish in the single digits for Joe Biden in the New Hampshire primary, the former vice president's campaign moved on to South Carolina, where he's expecting more voter support. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is telling his supporters on to Nevada and South Carolina after last night's win. With more, here's Bloomberg's John Tucker in this live report.
Michael, Bernie Sanders claimed 25% of the vote, while Pete Buttigieg scored 24%. Buttigieg losing to Sanders by about 4,000 votes. And Amy Klobuchar's strong showing claimed 19% of the vote, while Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden slid to single digits with 9% and 8% respectively. Weak showings from Andrew Yang and former Senator Michael Bennet led both those candidates to drop out of the race. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
John, thank you very much, sir. In the NHL, the Islanders and Rangers won. The Devils lost. In the NBA, the Celtics lost. The Wizards won. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We're coming up to 5:49 on Wall Street. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. Let's get more now on last night's New Hampshire primary results and where the race stands now as we head on to Nevada and South Carolina. Bloomberg Radio and Television Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli is with us from our Bloomberg Radio and Television New Hampshire primary headquarters in Manchester. Good morning, Kevin. What are your takeaways from last night?
Well, good morning. I got to be honest. If I sound a little tired, I am.
Yeah, I can understand that. You never
big
sleep.
Takeaways. Can we turn up the volume just a little on this? Thank you. My big takeaways are threefold. First and foremost, bad night for Joe Biden. I mean, he didn't even stay in the state last night, Nathan. He went right to South Carolina. This is someone who had been dominating as the front runner for national polls, and now he's really holding on. So he doesn't have momentum, but he says he has a South Carolina primary firewall. We're going to find out if that's going to hold true. Secondly, great night for Senator Bernie Sanders, as well as former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. They can now claim momentum. They can now claim that they are the front runners, and they're duking it out for two very different lanes. Sanders has coalesced the progressive wing of the party. Buttigieg now the front runner of the centrist lane. But don't count out, and here's the third point I'll make, don't count out Senator Amy Klobuchar, who defied expectations, beat Elizabeth Warren from nearby Massachusetts, and now Senator Klobuchar can go to New York City today, try to make some money from the donors and say that she's got new life in her campaign.
All right, let's take those 3 points in reverse order, starting with Amy Klobuchar. Does she have the resources needed to make that argument that she can continue to take on Pete Buttigieg for that more so-called moderate wing of the Democratic Party to go toe-to-toe with Bernie Sanders on the progressive side?
Buttigieg's supporters would say no. Klobuchar's supporters would say yes. And so now the case is Klobuchar is going to get a second look. She's going to be, she's going to be, campaigning ferociously now as she tries to make that case. But for Buttigieg, just take a minute to pause. Here's a guy who came from a town most people in America, quite frankly, that we're not familiar with. Mm-hmm. And he, wins by all accounts in the debacle that was the Iowa caucus, but he had a strong showing at minimum, and then has another strong showing here in New Hampshire. And so that really can't be taken away from the guy as he heads on to Nevada and South Carolina. The criticism of Buttigieg is that he can't win a diverse electorate. Well, we're going to find out. And so, you can't blame him for competing in two early states that haven't had a diverse electorate, but that's been the criticism that's plagued his presidential campaign. We'll find out if it's true or not.
I wonder if that's a similar question that Bernie Sanders faces, if he can attract a diverse electorate when, he has such strong views on the progressive side of the Democratic Party. And when you add up the numbers that Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar got in the vote in New Hampshire, it's like 43% for the so-called moderate side against Bernie Sanders at 26.
My friend, but that's the same thing they said about Trump when there was a crowded field. Because if you add up all the numbers for the other candidates, none of them have a supermajority. None of them have a majority.
Right.
But you add up all the opposition against Biden, and it's still only a fraction. The other elephant in the room in this is Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg now is going to be, whether or not he makes the next debate, we'll know relatively soon in Las Vegas. But his stop and frisk policies have been a question of all of the campaigns. And while he hasn't competed in Iowa, he hasn't competed in New Hampshire, and Biden has, we have to include him in the discussions about whether the centrist moderate lane, because he has infinite amount of resources. He said he's willing to pour all the money in. So now he'll be an increasing factor as we inch even closer to Super Tuesday.
And he very well, as you mentioned, could be part of the conversation if he gets that one more poll. Of course, Michael Bloomberg is founder and majority owner of Bloomberg Radio parent company, Bloomberg LP. In our less than a minute here, I want to get to your first point from your takeaway. Joe Biden heading now to South Carolina. Is that a last stand for him?
Yes, it is, and it even is now. I think with the Bloomberg question hanging in the shadows of all of this, it's even more of a question for his campaign.
Bloomberg Radio and Television Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli with us this morning from Manchester, New Hampshire, part of our team coverage covering the Democratic primary race all the way through Nevada and South Carolina on into Super Tuesday and beyond. Kevin will be back with us throughout the morning here on Bloomberg Radio. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:54 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Law Report, brought to you by American Arbitration Association. International trade or business dispute resolved faster with the International Center for Dispute Resolution, the leader in alternative dispute resolution around the world, ICDR.org. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
A regulator in Norway is raising questions about the legality of a Microsoft program designed to boost worker productivity, saying the software may not meet European privacy requirements. The Trump administration's proposed 2021 budget includes a new user tax on barge operators. Proceeds would be used to upgrade the nation's lock and dam system. The Senate voted along party lines to confirm Andrew Brasher for a seat on the Atlanta-based Federal Appeals Court, increasing the conservative lean on the panel. Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
Now it's time for our Bloomberg Daily Law Brief, and today we're looking at the Supreme Court justices returning from their break next week, and we'll have to decide whether or not to take up Obamacare. For more on the issue, June Grasso speaks with Bloomberg News Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr.
It seemed like it wasn't going to be decided by the Supreme Court, and now it seems like, well, it might be decided by the Supreme Court. Where does it stand?
It may still be a long shot, but there is at least a chance the court is going to take it up this term. They're scheduled to discuss the case at their private February 21st conference. The blue states, the ones who are defending Obamacare, have said that the court could agree at that conference to take up the case and then schedule it on an expedited basis and resolve it this term. That's something the court is usually loath to do, to decide a case that quickly, but it's at least theoretically open to them.
Would they have to set another argument day, or would they be able to fit it in their schedule?
Well, the blue states have suggested, and also the House of Representatives have suggested two possibilities. One would be ultra-expedited briefing and hear the case in the last week of April, which is the last scheduled argument week, or they suggest the court could schedule a special sitting in May. It has been a very, very long time since the court did something like that.
Has the Trump administration weighed in on whether or not it wants the court to hear the case?
Yeah, the Trump administration, like Republican-led states, have said that there's no need for the Supreme Court to get involved now. They would rather have the case go back to a federal district judge who has some more work to do to decide whether the entire law should be thrown out or just small parts of it.
And that's Bloomberg News Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr speaking with Joan Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Futures this morning are on the rise. S&P futures are up 13 points. Dow futures up 126 and NASDAQ futures up 49. The DAX in Germany is up 0.7%. CAC in Paris up 0.4%, and the FTSE 100 up 1/3%. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 1.61%. The yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.6% or 81 cents at $50.75 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 40 cents. It's little changed at $15.69.70 an ounce. And the euro at 1.0919 against the dollar. The yen 109.98. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
World 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, February 12th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
Bernie Sanders wins the primary in New Hampshire.
Pete Buttigieg finishes a strong second, cementing his place in the race.
A surprise third place vaults Amy Klobuchar to top candidate status.
And week results for Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden raise questions about their viability.
Bernie Sanders says his win in New Hampshire marks the beginning of the end of Donald Trump.
We're going to Nevada. We're going to South Carolina. We're going to win those states as well.
I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower on Sports. Wins for the Rangers and Islanders, a loss to the Devils. Yankee pitchers and catchers report today in Tampa.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures gaining after last night's Democratic primary in New Hampshire. More on that in a moment. But first, it is coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 13 points this morning. Dow futures up 125 and NASDAQ futures up 49. The DAX in Germany is up about 0.8%. The CAC in Paris and FTSE 100 both up about 0.4%. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 1.61%. Yield on the 2-year 1.4%. 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.6% or 79 cents at $50.73 a barrel. COMEX gold little change at $15.6930 an ounce. The euro 1.0915 against the dollar, and the yen is at 109.97. Nathan.
Karen, we begin in New Hampshire, where it was a big night for the senator from Vermont. Here with the very latest on the vote is Bloomberg Radio and Television Chief Washington correspondent Kevin Cirilli.
Senator Bernie Sanders declaring victory in the New Hampshire primary. He was followed by former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Senator Amy Klobuchar, having a political upset of sorts and finishing in third place. She's hoping that will get new momentum into her campaign. Meanwhile, Senators Elizabeth Warren and former Vice President Joe Biden finishing in fourth and fifth, respectively. The question becomes, where does Elizabeth Warren go from here? Joe Biden says he knows where he's headed, South Carolina, but questions linger about the long-term viability of the former frontrunner's campaign. Reporting from Manchester, New Hampshire, I'm Kevin Cirilli. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Sanders came out on top in New Hampshire, but it was close. Let's get the score now from Bloomberg's John Tucker, who joins us live with the numbers. Good morning, John.
Yeah, good morning, Karen. Bernie Sanders claimed 25% of the vote, while Pete Buttigieg scored 24%. Buttigieg losing to Sanders by about 4,000 votes. Amy Klobuchar's strong showing claimed 19% of the vote, while Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden both slid to single digits. Warren coming in at 9%, with Joe Biden at 8%. And weak showings from Andrew Yang and former Senator Michael Bennet led both of those candidates to exit the race. Up next, all eyes turn to Nevada and South Carolina, which hold votes February 22nd and the 29th. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thanks. The results show frontrunners emerging and the field thinning on both the liberal and moderate sides of the Democratic Party. We get details from Bloomberg Washington Bureau Chief Craig Gordon in Manchester.
You know, Bernie is the undisputed sort of leader on the left. In the centrist camp, you have really three. You have Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, obviously won Iowa. And there's a third name familiar to all of us, and that's Michael Bloomberg. Chaos is Michael Bloomberg's friend. If there were a strong winner in Iowa and a strong winner in New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, by the time we all get to Super Tuesday on March 3rd, it might be very hard for sort of somebody new to kind of poke their way into that top tier. That's the exact opposite of what's happening.
Well, so far, Michael Bloomberg has polled at 10% or higher in 3 national polls, one more double-digit showing in a national survey, and he would be eligible for upcoming debates. A quick disclaimer, we should note that Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio.
Well, Sanders and Buttigieg were the big winners. A strong third-place finish from Amy Klobuchar promises a big boost to her candidacy. Joel Payne is a Democratic strategist who worked on the Clinton campaign.
It's obvious that she helped herself with that debate. It's obvious that Biden cratering, a lot of that support is going over to Klobuchar. I think that the establishment class of the party, what I would call the moderate establishment class, is still looking for a champion. They haven't found it in Biden. I think that some moderates are probably not completely satisfied with Buttigieg yet.
And now Klobuchar faces questions about whether she has the money and organization to take her campaign to Nevada, South Carolina, and the Super Tuesday states. Her campaign raised $3 million in the days after Friday's debate and has plans to expand her staff.
Well, Klobuchar was the big gainer last night, and Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren were the ones losing ground. Bloomberg's Ms. Relena Agafopoulou was with the Warren campaign last night in Manchester.
It really seemed as though it was a terrible night for the Warren campaign, but her speech was way more enthusiastic than one would expect. It was definitely not a concession speech. She made clear that she's here for the long haul, saying that she has an organization that's going to keep her through Super Tuesday.
Well, meantime, Joe Biden left New Hampshire before the results were in, choosing instead to head to South Carolina ahead of the state's primary in 2.5 weeks. Biden appears to be staking his entire campaign on his performance there. We get more from Bloomberg's Kaylee Leans.
That is a much more diverse state. About 60% of the Democratic voters in South Carolina are black, and that is an area of demographic strength for the likes of Joe Biden, less so for Pete Buttigieg, who, yes, has done well in Iowa and New Hampshire, but those are predominantly white states. So diversity and the ability to appeal to a more diverse set of voters is going to be very key as we move forward to those races.
A defeat in South Carolina would effectively knock Biden out of the race.
South Carolina could also be telling for Pete Buttigieg. We get more from Bloomberg Politics editor Wendy Benjaminson.
He doesn't poll well with non-white voters. He's getting some bad press for having, as mayor of South Bend, fired a black police chief and a black fire chief. On the other hand, you get momentum. Winning proves electability. Pete Buttigieg came out of Iowa with more delegates than Bernie Sanders. The centrist minorities will start looking at him.
And after Iowa and New Hampshire, here's where the delegate count stands. Buttigieg leads with 22. Bernie Sanders has 21 delegates. Elizabeth Warren has 8. Amy Klobuchar has 7. And Joe Biden so far has 6 delegates. It's still early, though. Iowa and New Hampshire amount to just 1.6% of all Democratic delegates. Futures this morning are on the rise. S&P futures up 13 points. Dow futures up 128. NASDAQ futures up about 50. 10-year Treasury down 3/30 seconds. Yield 1.61%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.42%. And NYMEX crude oil is up 1.5%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. 6:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Bernie Sanders says his win in New Hampshire marks the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
We're going to Nevada. We're going to South Carolina. We're going to win those states as well.
Runner-up Pete Buttigieg.
I know that we all share the spirit that we heard from some of our volunteers at a poll site earlier today who welcomed a competing candidate with chance of vote blue no matter who. We are on the same team.
Amy Klobuchar touted her third-place finish to supporters.
While there are still ballots left to count, we have beaten the odds every step of the way.
Meanwhile, entrepreneur Andrew Yang is ending the presidential campaign he built on the promise of a universal basic income of $1,000 a month for every American over the age of 18. Yang says he did not foresee broad enough support in upcoming primary states to win delegates and declined to endorse another candidate. Turning to other news now, all 4 U.S. prosecutors who backed a long prison stay for Trump ally Roger Stone have resigned from his witness tampering and obstruction of justice case. As Bloomberg's Bob Moon reports, it's a stunning rebuke to a Justice Department that cut the recommended sentence by more than half after a critical tweet from the president.
The self-described political dirty trickster was found by Robert Mueller's investigation and the jury that convicted him to have lied under oath to Congress 5 separate times in protecting his longtime friend Donald Trump. It wasn't Stone's actions that Trump condemned, but the 7 to 9 year sentence recommended by prosecutors.
I thought the recommendation was ridiculous.
While Trump insists he didn't pressure the Justice Department, he attacked prosecutors via Twitter and wouldn't say if he'll consider commuting the sentence entirely, outraging Democrats, including Senator Richard Blumenthal, yet again.
Absolutely stomach-turning.
Republican leader Mitch McConnell, on the other hand, declined to say anything.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on that.
Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Siba, a standard poodle, was selected as Best in Show at the 144th edition of the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show in New York last night. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. 6:09 on Wall Street. Let's get more on sports. Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, as Mets pitchers and catchers worked out in Port St. Lucie, their Yankee counterparts officially report today in Tampa the Yanks heavy favorites to win their first pennant in 11 years, not only due to the addition of Garrett Cole, but the subtraction of Cole in Houston and Mookie Betts in Boston. The Red Sox finally have their new manager. Ron Renicky has an interim tag. He was Alex Cora's bench coach. Cora, of course, fired due to the sign stealing scandal in Houston. And now that we know technology was used to steal signs, the question is, how do teams prevent their signs from being stolen? Joe Girardi has taken over as manager of the Phillies.
Already started addressing how we protect our stuff and our signs, and talk to catchers and pitchers, and plans that we have in spring training to start incorporating some of this stuff so it's not foreign when we get to the first day of the season.
Girardi back managing. His last game with the Yanks was that 2017 Game 7 loss in Houston when signs were stolen. All 3 local hockey teams were on the ice. Rangers won 4-1 at Winnipeg. Chris Kreider scored in each of the first 2 periods. Numbers 21 and 22 on the year for him. Islanders blew a 3-0 lead but scored twice in the final minute. Beat Philadelphia 5-3. The Isles, in 10 games played in Brooklyn, yet to lose in regulation. The Devils were beaten by Florida 5-3. Scary moment, first period in Anaheim. Jay Baumeister of the St. Louis Blues suffered a cardiac episode, collapsed while on the bench. He is said to be conscious and alert now, but they stopped playing the game after the incident. Knicks tonight are home for Washington. The Nets will host red-hot Toronto, winners of 15 straight. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
All right, John, thanks. In other sports news, one of the greatest spectacles in the soccer world may be coming to the entertainment capital of the world. The Washington Post reports promoters of an annual U.S. summer tour want to arrange a Barcelona-Real Madrid match at the new NFL stadium in Las Vegas. If a deal is struck, it would be the first sporting event at Allegiant Stadium before the Raiders move there. The NFL season begins in early September. The match would happen probably in August. S&P futures higher by 13 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
There's just 2 days to go until Valentine's Day, so head to your local Asda in London. We've got extra special bouquets from just £15. Gifts they'll adore at prices you'll love. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Available from 12th of February.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black, fit it with privacy glass, a full leather ebony interior, then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black, understated, has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar, Land Rover, above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
For gentlemen who value the quality of an exquisitely made shoe, Jones Bootmaker Master Shoemakers introduce the world-exclusive collection by Loke. Experience the comfort of the cushioned leather footbed and the sustainable, repairable Goodyear welted sole. The world-exclusive Comfort Collection by Jones Bootmaker and Loke, handmade in Britain. Available at Bow Lane, Broad Street, Fenchurch Street, German Street, Canary Wharf and stores nationwide. Or order online at jonesbootmaker.com.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
From Bloomberg Television. Here's Heidi Stroud-Watts.
Let's get some more on SoftBank and whether this really removes a major challenge. Joining us now out of Singapore is Asymmetric Advisors Senior Market Strategist Amir Anvarzadeh. Let me start again. Amir, great to have you with us. Does this really remove a pretty big headache for Masayoshi Son?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's as your reporter was suggesting, it's $40 billion of debt. And although we think that the T-Mobile is going to renegotiate the price for Sprint, I think there's little doubt that they're going to reduce the price that they've offered for Sprint over a year ago. And so, yeah, but it does help the balance sheet. I think SoftBank's big problem has been its overstretched balance sheet on the group level, and this goes a long way in kind of answering some of those questions. Obviously, Sprint is not part of the Vision Fund investment, so the Vision Fund will still have a lot of problems going forward in regards to getting these companies back into shape in order to get them IPO'd. But as far as SoftBank itself is concerned, the merger approval is a huge positive.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks gaining this morning along with U.S. stock index futures. Crude oil is jumping amid signs the spread of the coronavirus in China is slowing, and investor optimism the global economy can weather the storm. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 14 points. Dow futures up 131. NASDAQ futures up 50. The DAX in Germany's up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 430 seconds, yield 1.61%. Yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil's up 1.6% or 81 cents at $50.75 a barrel. COMEX gold is down less than 0.1%, down $1.20 to $15.68.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0915 against the dollar. British pound 1.2982, and the yen 109.98. Cisco Systems among companies scheduled to report earnings today, and we are watching shares at Bed Bath & Beyond down about 24% this morning after reporting that a key measure of sales contracted in December and January. The latest sign the home furnishings retailer faces a tough road back to growth. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Joe Biden has brought his wounded presidential campaign to South Carolina, staking his hopes for a comeback on the loyalty of black voters after a dismal finish in the New Hampshire primary, magnified by his disappointing finish in Iowa. Biden says, "I know this is going to be the fight of my life." Bernie Sanders came out the victor in last night's New Hampshire primary. With more, here's Bloomberg's John Tucker in this live report.
Yeah, Michael, Bernie Sanders claiming 25% of the vote, while Pete Buttigieg scored 24%. Buttigieg lost to Sanders by about 4,000 votes. Amy Klobuchar's strong showing claimed 19% of the vote there, while Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden both slid to single digits with 9% and 8% respectively. And there were weak showings from Andrew Yang and former Senator Michael Bennet that led both those candidates to drop out of the race. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Michael.
Thank you very much, John. In the NHL, the Islanders and Rangers won. The Devils lost. In the NBA, the Celtics lost. The Wizards won. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Michael, thank you. We're coming to 620 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and now Brown University Political Science Chair Wendy Schiller joins us on this morning after the New Hampshire primary. Good morning, Wendy. We heard the breakdown of the numbers there from the Granite State. Where does the race stand now for you?
Well, when you think about it, there's a couple of things to look at. One is that Bernie Sanders won a neighboring state. He won by less than he won last time, but he had more candidates against him. But the combined block of Klobuchar and Buttigieg, that's a big moderate block that really showed its muscle last night in New Hampshire. That really outweighed the combined total of Warren and Sanders. So when you think about the struggle in the Democratic Party right now between the sort of more progressive and the candidates that are selling themselves as moderates, the moderates had a very good night last night in New Hampshire.
Moderates may have had a good night in terms of numbers, but they're splitting the vote now. Does that give Sanders some momentum as we head into Nevada next week?
Maybe it's still pretty early in the Democratic process. They have proportional representation, which is why my understanding is Sanders and Buttigieg have the same number of delegates coming out of New Hampshire. So that's the whole, Sanders can claim victory, but, you're not getting any more delegates than the next closest person to you. You've got some really interesting barometers coming up. Nevada is a very heavily union. It's more Latino. We have to see who does well in that caucus and whether those votes get counted properly. And then you go to South Carolina, where Biden basically has to save his campaign. And if Biden emerges the winner in South Carolina, if there's a decent African-American turnout, that reorients the party towards figuring out a way to get the African-American turnout up, because it's going to be very difficult to beat Trump no matter who the nominee is if that turnout doesn't get up.
That you would argue then further muddy the field in the moderate side of the race, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a really big test to me, looking at Super Tuesday in early March. What's the turnout level, particularly among African-American voters across the South, but also, who goes to whom? Does Sanders get younger black voters? There's sort of, a perception that Sanders is doing so well with young people and younger black voters, and that older black voters like Biden. We have to wait and see if that plays out. If Sanders can demonstrate they can get some turnout and some support from African-American voters on Super Tuesday, then I think he becomes a real frontrunner. But if he can't, I think that big question mark lingers, and I think one of those two people, Klobuchar or Buttigieg, eventually will have to sort of step aside. And the party really is divided. I mean, this is the big signal that it's divided. And New Hampshire is not diverse. It doesn't represent the base of the entire Democrat Party. However, it does represent independent suburban voters, typically. It kind of aligns with them. And so if you can win a good portion of those voters with a particular ideology in the Democratic Party, that bodes well for the general election. So it's confusing. And you bring in Bloomberg, who's going to come in with lots of advertising and be on the ballot, and that also could really affect Klobuchar and Buttigieg.
And we should mention, of course, Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg Radio parent, Bloomberg LP. The one name I haven't heard you mention yet is Elizabeth Warren. She sounded determined to go on last night in New Hampshire. Can she go on now with so much progressive support behind Sanders now?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is Nathan, this is a story of one big campaign mistake, going too early for Medicare for all, and then not really being able to explain the plan because it wasn't her plan to begin with. Bernie said it in the debate, and it was true. It's Bernie's plan, and not being able to explain how she paid for it took 4 weeks to get the plan out. It was just one really whopping big campaign mistake, and it really took the wind out of her sails. And now there just isn't a compelling reason to go for Warren over Sanders if you really want a woman to run for president of the Democratic Party. Klobuchar has positioned herself pretty well now to take that vote. So I just don't see good things happening for Warren, moving out of New Hampshire.
We got less than a minute left here. How do you see things shaking out in Super Tuesday? Of course, California is the big prize on March 3rd. And I think some of the last polling I saw, Bernie Sanders has a pretty significant lead there.
Yeah, California, is a very progressive state, and of course California can do good things for Bernie, but again, it's really the fundamentals. If you're paying attention, and if it's true that the majority of Democrats want someone who can beat Trump, you have to look and see who gets out the door and who votes, and a Latino, African-American, women, are they going to get out the door and vote for Sanders? Is that the core, or Sanders, does he have a ceiling? In other words, does he have a really enthusiastic part of the party, but he can't really get over the mountain in terms of getting everybody behind him? And I think California's going to be a good test for that within the Democrat Party.
Looking forward to talking to you again as this Democratic race goes on. Wendy Schiller, chair of the Political Science Department at Brown University, on this morning after the New Hampshire primary. Stay with us for continuing team coverage of the results and the landscape for the Democratic race after the New Hampshire primary. S&P futures are higher by 13 points right now. Dow futures up 125. NASDAQ futures higher by 49.5 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Bed Bath & Beyond would like to move beyond its sales slump, but that's not happening, and shares are tumbling this morning after the company reported a key measure of sales fell in December and January. There was a bright spot, digital sales. They grew about 20%, but shares are down about 24% before the opening bell. For another retailer, a reprieve. A bankruptcy judge says he'll sign off on the sale of Forever 21 to mall owner Simon & Brookfield, along with Authentic Brands. We'll see if Equifax has anything new
to say about its massive data breach a few years back as it reports quarterly results. Federal prosecutors this week charged 4 members of China's military in connection with the breach, in which personal data for tens of millions of Americans was stolen. Fed Chair Jay Powell makes another trip to Capitol Hill today. In remarks yesterday, he remained positive on the U.S. economic outlook, but he also said the Fed was keeping a close watch on fallout from the coronavirus. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
If you're a growing business, be ready when your big moment arrives. One day, you might need to take an online payment at 4 a.m. for a unicorn cake. Or you might need to take lots of payments due to a surge in demand for duck egg blue paint this spring. Be ready with Barclaycard Business. Sign up before the 3rd of April and get 50% off e-commerce rental or card machine rental for 12 months. Search Barclaycard Business and find offers designed for growing businesses. Barclaycard, we take every payment seriously. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's, exclusions and contract apply. New UK customers only.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey.
Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
The famous 5 were at home discussing their next adventure. Let's visit Tower Bridge, said Dick. Or Cardiff Castle, added Julian. St. Michael's Mount, cried Anne. Dick jumped up. Wherever we're going, we'll need to leave right now. Relax, said George. It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pajamas. With faster journeys across our network, adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Terms and conditions apply. Selected routes only.
Light up the life of someone special this Valentine's Day with the Perfume Shop. We all know nothing smells as good as the person you love. This Valentine's Day with 20% off second items. Treat them and treat yourself. Think the Perfume Shop for that personal finishing touch. Visit us in store or online at theperfumeshop.com. Offer ends 14th of Feb. T's and C's apply. Visit the website for details.
Dear Cass, Sweet Pea, not sure what I did to deserve a love like yours. Still can't believe I get to wake up next to you every day. I'm so lucky. You make me want to be a better man. Mind, body, and soul.
Pork balls, fried rice, kung pao chicken, spring rolls extra fried, order 55.
Yeah, here. Happy Valentine's, my love, forever. Your little boop. This Valentine's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
Winter joggers of London, it's chilly. Your legs are caked in mud and your nose is running faster than you. Then, get that heating on. You deserve it. Thanks to Hive Active Heating, you can control your heating wherever you are with a tap of the app, which could save you up to £120 a year by never having to heat an empty home. Buy today and get a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. The results are in, and Bernie Sanders is the winner of New Hampshire's primary.
This victory here
is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
And while Sanders declared victory in the state, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar also emerged with strong showings. For more, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nate. Pete Buttigieg scored a close second in the primary with 24% of the vote compared to 25% for Sanders. Just about 4,000 votes separate the two. Amy Klobuchar claimed 19% of the vote, while Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden both slid to single digits. Warren coming in at 9%, with Joe Biden at 8%. Weak showings from Andrew Yang and former Senator Michael Bennett led both of those candidates to exit the race. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Both Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden failed to reach the 15% vote threshold to earn delegates. Biden's campaign appears to be in a free fall, and we get more from Bloomberg Washington Bureau Chief Craig Gordon.
If your entire calling card is electability, I'm the one that could beat Donald Trump, and you're getting not even 10% in a state that you should do fine in, that's just crushing.
Biden left New Hampshire before the results were in, choosing instead to head to South Carolina ahead of the state's primary. A defeat there would effectively knock him out of the race.
Elizabeth Warren is pushing on, though a viable path to the convention appears narrow for her as well. Joel Payne is a Democratic strategist who worked on the Clinton campaign.
Hers is now a path that is dependent upon other things that are out of her control. Buttigieg has to split. Klobuchar has to split. Sanders has to split in order for Warren to rise.
And the biggest gainer on the night appears to be Amy Klobuchar, who's primed to build on her momentum from Friday's debate and last night's finish. More from Bloomberg Political's editor, Wendy Benjaminson.
No one thought she was going to get out of Iowa. So she has raised $3 million since Friday night's debate. She's got another debate Wednesday in Las Vegas. She does very well in these debates, and that could give her some momentum.
All right, so after Iowa and New Hampshire, here's where things stand on the delegate count. Pete Buttigieg leads the field with 22, followed by Bernie Sanders with 21 delegates. Elizabeth Warren has 8. Amy Klobuchar has 7. Joe Biden so far has 6 delegates. But it is still early. Iowa and New Hampshire represent just 1.6% of all Democratic delegates.
And now let's get a quick check on the markets, with S&P futures up about 14 points this morning. Dow futures up 132 and NASDAQ futures up 52. 10-year Treasury down 430 seconds, yield 1.61%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.42%, and the euro at 1.0915 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Thank you, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by Land Rover. The Only Adventure sales event is happening now until March 31st. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for details on the new Discovery Sport. Land Rover, above and beyond. Here's Michael Barr.
Nathan, thank you very much. Senator Bernie Sanders celebrated his New Hampshire victory with supporters in Manchester.
Now, our campaign is not just about beating Trump. It is about transforming this country.
Meanwhile, Pete Buttigieg supporters chanted President Pete during his rally in Nashua.
We also know better than to try to defeat such a disruptive president by relying on the same Washington framework and mindset. After all, if today's Washington were serving America well, a guy like Donald Trump would never have come within cheating distance of the Oval Office in the first place.
Amy Klobuchar says her surprise third-place finish shows her campaign is defying the odds.
Donald Trump's worst nightmare is that the people in the middle, the people who have had enough of the name-calling and the mud-slinging, have someone to vote for in November.
With no viable path to victory, businessman Andrew Yang says he's stepping out of the race for the Democratic Party's 2020 presidential nomination. In a speech at his New Hampshire election headquarters last night, Yang says his campaign has had an impact.
This is the beginning. This movement is the future of American politics. This movement is the future of the Democratic Party.
Yang says he made issues like universal basic income and the economic shift caused by automation part of the mainstream conversation. Senator Michael Bennet also dropped out of the race. Turning to news outside of New Hampshire now, all 4 U.S. government prosecutors who backed a long prison stay for Trump ally Roger Stone resigned from the case after the Justice Department cut his recommended sentence by more than half. President Trump had tweeted earlier that a possible 9-year prison sentence was very unfair. The Justice Department recommended 3 to 4 years. Trump later spoke to reporters.
No, I didn't speak to the justice. I'd be able to do it if I wanted. I have the absolute right to do it. I stay out of things
to a degree that people wouldn't believe, but I didn't speak to him. I thought the recommendation was ridiculous. I thought the whole prosecution was ridiculous.
The president declined to say whether he would consider commuting Stone's sentence down the road. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Bard. This is Bloomberg Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. It's coming up to 6:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, Yankee pitchers and catchers report to date in Tampa. Met pitchers and catchers worked out yesterday in Port St. Lucie. Under the direction of new manager Luis Rojas, who was asked about the health of Yoenis Cespedes.
You know, he's running, he's hitting. I've had conversations with him, but we don't have the timeline yet. I mean, the performance staff is working on his progression, and we're going from there.
So opening day hasn't been ruled out yet.
We don't know. I mean, there's no timeline yet. Once I get it, I will, happy to share it with you guys.
Ankle and foot injuries kept Cespedes out all of last season. Played only 38 games the year before that. His return could be a key for the Mets. Red Sox finally made it official, promoting Ron Renicky to interim manager. He had been the bench coach. Stanley Cup playoffs begin in 2 months. Rangers and Devils right now on the outside. Blue Shirts did win last night at Winnipeg, 4-1. Chris Kreider scored twice. The Devils, who had notched at least a point in 6 straight games, lost to Florida 5-3. The Islanders do appear headed to the postseason. They beat Philadelphia 5-3. They snapped a 3-all tie with a Ryan pull-up goal with 41 seconds left. College basketball, Syracuse lost to NC State. Fordham lost by 30 at Davidson. San Diego State won again and is now 25-0. Nets tonight welcome in the hottest team in the NBA. Defending league champion Toronto has won 15 in a row. The Knicks will host Washington. It's the final games before the All-Star break. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
Thank you, John. It's 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Harry's may have fixed shaving, but it broke its exit strategy in the process. I'm Brooke Sutherland, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. The shaving startup's planned sale to Schick razor maker Edgewell officially collapsed on Monday after the FTC sued to block the deal on anti-competitive grounds. In its complaint, the FTC relies on a distinction between the online and brick-and-mortar worlds that feels rather silly in this day and age. I don't think anyone would want to task the FTC with picking out the winners and losers, but the current system seems ill-suited to navigating the changes to the economy. One of the odd messages being sent by the FTC's decision is that it may be better for upstart consumer brands to avoid physical stores if they want to sell themselves to more established organizations down the road, or that they should look to sell out before they get big enough to matter. Edgewell investors may be happy to say goodbye to an acquisition that was arguably overpriced, but for smaller brands, the road to making it big just got tougher. I'm Brooke Sutherland. For more opinion, visit Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN GO on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN GO. It's 6:38 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
There are fresh revelations about a huge waste of natural gas by shale producers in the Permian Basin of Texas and New Mexico. The controversial practice of flaring, simply torching high-pressure releases of gas that come with oil drilling, is the safest and cleanest way to deal with it because of a lack of pipelines to move the gas to market. But it's already a major source of negative attention, if not embarrassment, for Permian drillers over concerns about vast releases of greenhouse gas. Now, a new study finds it's even worse than first thought. Typically, research is focused on producers at the wellhead. The new totals include emissions from gas processing facilities in the region, which are receiving more gas than they can handle. Now, Oslo-based oil field consultant Rystad figures they burned off or released about 190 million cubic feet per day of the fuel last year, raising the total by 30% to roughly 810 million. That's almost enough gas to supply 5 million U.S. homes. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Okay, Bob, thank you. Now some other stories we're following for you this morning. Lyft shares are going in reverse. The ride-hailing company disappointed investors with its quarterly earnings and forecast for this year. Lyft did not provide updated guidance on when it will turn a profit. Right now, the stock is down almost 5% in the pre-market. Shares of Bed Bath & Beyond are down 24% in early trading. The home furnishings retailer says comparable store sales fell 5.4% in the most recent months. And Nissan is suing former chairman Carlos Ghosn for $91 million. Nissan says it's trying to recover monetary damages the former CEO inflicted on the company. Ghosn was arrested in 2018 on charges of financial wrongdoing. At the end of December, he made a dramatic escape to Lebanon. Futures moving higher on Wall Street ahead of Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's second day of testimony on Capitol Hill on the semi-annual monetary policy report from the central bank. Right now, S&P futures are higher by 13 points. Dow futures up 133. NASDAQ futures gaining 52 points. 10 years down 3/30 seconds. Yield 1.61% on a 10-year Treasury note. The 2-year yield just shy of 1.43%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
You're 169 in the queue.
I proposed on the 169. She got off at the next stop.
You're my 169th greatest lover.
The number 169 never screamed going places until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of March 2020. £3,311.25p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Dear Cass, Sweet Pea, not sure what I did to deserve a love like yours. Still can't believe I get to wake up next to you every day. I'm so lucky. You make me want to be a better man. Mind, body, and soul.
Pork balls, fried rice, Kung Pao chicken, spring rolls extra fried, order 55.
Yeah, here. Happy Valentine's, my love, forever, your little boop. This Valentine's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with Moonpig.com. Download the app today.
Network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
With almost all of the votes counted in the New Hampshire primary, Senator Bernie Sanders has a narrow projected win over his moderate rival, Pete Buttigieg, although the biggest surprise of the night is the strong third-place finish from Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Thank you. Thank you, New Hampshire. We are on to Nevada because the best is yet to come.
Klobuchar leapfrogged over Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. Japan's health ministry says 39 new cases of the coronavirus have been confirmed on board the Diamond Princess cruise ship quarantined at a Japanese port. That's a total of 174 cases of infection on board. The death toll now over 1,100 worldwide. Pope Francis today declined to approve the ordination of married men to address the priest shortage in the Amazon, sidestepping an issue that has dominated debate in the Catholic Church as he issued a document on the Amazon region. U.S. stock futures are following world markets this morning, showing moderate gains. I'm Michael Toscano.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:47 on Wall Street. Futures this morning on the rise. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. That's right. U.S. futures are climbing right now. Dow futures up 128 points. S&P's gained 13, and NASDAQ futures rise by 50. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.61%. Gold is down 2 points, and Shanghai rose 0.9% overnight. Where European markets are also trading higher, led by gains in Germany and Italy. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 2 o'clock, the monthly budget statement. After the bell last night, Lyft revenue beat the highest estimates. And regarding earnings this morning, CVS EPS beat estimates, and look for Shopify to report around 7 a.m. In other news, the German economic minister said that Tesla may get state subsidies for a German factory. And wrapping things up, Qualcomm raised to outperform at Daiwa. Under Armour cut to neutral at Piper, and Cardinal Health raised to equal weight over at Morgan Stanley. Live from the First Word breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen.
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news of your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK, and just watching shares of CVS. They're up about 0.1% in early trading following its earnings release. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, after a disappointing finish in the single digits for Joe Biden in the New Hampshire primary, the former vice president's campaign moved on to South Carolina, where he's expecting more voter support. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is telling his supporters on to Nevada and South Carolina after last night's win. With more, here's Bloomberg's John Tucker in this live report.
And Michael, Bernie Sanders claimed 25% of the vote, while Pete Buttigieg scored 24%. Buttigieg lost to Sanders by about 4,000 votes. Amy Klobuchar's strong showing claimed 19% of the vote. Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden slid to single digits with 9 and 8% respectively. And weak showings from Andrew Yang and former Senator Michael Bennet led both those candidates to drop out of the race. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Michael.
John, thank you, sir. In the NHL, the Islanders and Rangers won. The Devils lost. In the NBA, the Celtics lost. The Wizards won. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. We're at 6:49 on Wall Street. Now it's time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in our nation's capital include a second day of testimony for Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, this time before the Senate Banking Committee. President Trump meeting at the White House today with his counterpart from Ecuador, and prosecutors in the Roger Stone case quitting en masse after the Justice Department intervened for a reduced prison sentence for the longtime Trump confidant. Also making news outside the Beltway, but certainly with implications there, the New Hampshire primary and Bernie Sanders emerging the winner with a split decision on his right flank. Let's get more from our Bloomberg Radio and Television broadcast headquarters for the primary in Manchester, New Hampshire. Bloomberg Radio and Television Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli. Good morning, Kevin. Bernie Sanders can claim the win, but it might be difficult for him to claim presumptive frontrunner status given the results behind him, or am I wrong?
Well, I wouldn't call him a presumptive frontrunner either, but I mean, there's no question that he is a frontrunner, along with former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I mean, no one had heard of Pete Buttigieg a couple of years ago, and here's a guy who has a strong showing, by all accounts, won the Iowa caucus, and then has another strong showing in New Hampshire, and Bernie Sanders, someone who has completely captured the attention of the left-wing progressive base. So now this competition moves on to Nevada and South Carolina. We also should note that for the demise and the downfall of former Vice President Joe Biden. Now, I'm not writing him off. There's still the contest in South Carolina, which is a much more diverse electorate. He says he's got a South Carolinian firewall. But this is why Iowa and New Hampshire, for all the pundits saying that they're not important, why they are important. Because it has taken the wind out of the sails of Joe Biden. And there's some new wind and some new sails today with Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Although, you could argue that the Iowa and New Hampshire contests have outsized importance in the Democratic race, given that they represent less than 2% of the overall delegate count. So where does the race go from here?
Well, it goes to Nevada and South Carolina. You're absolutely right. There are a lot of folks who are saying that, maybe we should rethink the way that we do this system and whatnot. Either way, though, it is an important process as it vets candidates, and vetting is incredibly important, and it allows for the candidates to draw some sharp contrast against one another. So we should note that former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is going to be a factor in this race, especially with Biden's decline. Senator Elizabeth Warren, who is nearby in Massachusetts, she had a terrible showing here in New Hampshire. She finished fourth, but she even beat Biden. And Klobuchar, I think Klobuchar goes to New York City today. She tries to get some donors, tries to get some money. And so, we go onward, Nathan.
For a disclaimer, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is the current founder and majority owner of the parent company of Bloomberg Radio and Television, Bloomberg LP. You talk about non-household names like Pete Buttigieg. You could also argue that Amy Klobuchar coming in third place isn't exactly a household name either. Fascinating to see them emerging to try to capture the moderate wing of the Democratic race here, when Joe Biden, when he first entered, was not just a household name, but the presumptive frontrunner. What do you make of the shakeup in this race now?
Well, it's the biggest story. I mean, just when you think of where Joe Biden started and where he is right now, it's remarkable. And that is why Iowa and New Hampshire are important, is because his lackluster showings in those two states have really significantly hurt his campaign and his trajectory. And it's raised serious questions about his longer term viability.
Does this raise the importance of South Carolina in this contest?
Yeah, no question. I mean, for Biden to pull out early yesterday of New Hampshire and to go to South Carolina just shows how that really is in many ways shaping up to be his last stand.
Where does Elizabeth Warren fit now with Bernie Sanders running away, it seems, at least at the moment, with the progressive vote?
Well, 2 points on that. First and foremost, I mean, her campaign put out a memo saying that she's well positioned to continue onward through Super Tuesday, but there are serious questions about how much longer she can last. And the second point that I would make is that I would caution against people assuming that Elizabeth Warren supporters are Bernie Sanders supporters by default. There's a lot of polls and secondary polls, and Morning Consult's done a great job on this, that show that Elizabeth Warren supporters' second choice actually Buttigieg. A lot of Warren supporters go for Buttigieg. So I would caution against that.
That would arguably muddy the waters even further for Democratic voters who might be still undecided in this race. Talk a little bit about the undecided factor here and potentially the independent voter factor here when, that is a lot of the story in New Hampshire itself. I mean, that kind of encapsulates that, doesn't it?
Right. Democrats say that it's because they're all excited about defeating the prospects of defeating President Trump. But Republicans say that they are thrilled with the lackluster enthusiasm that they've seen in Iowa and New Hampshire. Though we should note, New Hampshire voting turnout was on level with last cycle.
There's so much of the story heading into this early voting, Kevin Cirilli, Bloomberg Radio and Television Chief Washington Correspondent, has been about the question between electability and purity in the Democratic race. Now that we've seen some voting happening and, strong showings from Bernie Sanders, can Bernie Sanders make an argument for electability for himself now?
Yeah, absolutely can. I mean, and he beat moderates. This is what the exit poll data, I'm a nerd, Nathan. but listen.
That's why we have you on this beat, Kevin.
I know. Is that why? Yeah. And so, but Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire, according to the CNN exit polls, did better with moderates than Joe Biden. Can we let that sink in for a second? Bernie Sanders did better with moderates in New Hampshire than Joe Biden. That's a stat that you're going to hear the Sanders wing completely echo and reverberate over the next couple of weeks. He didn't win on moderates. Buttigieg won with that. Klobuchar surpassed him on that front, but he beat Joe Biden on moderates. And the same conversation we were having last cycle about the Republicans. And that's why I'm so, I'm not bullish at all on talking of a brokered or contested or whatever you want to call it convention, is because for most Americans who aren't as politically obsessed as you and I, my friend, they view whoever gets the most votes as a win. Buttigieg and Bernie keep winning.
Bloomberg Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli, thank you as always for being with us from Manchester, New Hampshire, part of our team coverage of the Democratic primaries and caucuses as we go on to Nevada next weekend, South Carolina the weekend after that, Super Tuesday and beyond. We will continue to follow this race as it develops on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. And we are watching the markets. Futures are higher this morning, and we continue to watch shares of CVS Health in early trading. After it reported earnings, shares were higher. They have turned lower, but now trimming their declines just a bit, down 2.5%. This is after the midpoint of its 2020 forecast missed analyst estimates. S&P futures, though, up 13 points. Dow futures up 124. NASDAQ futures up about 50. The 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 1.61%. And the yield on the 2 years at 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.7% or 84 cents at $50.78 a barrel. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
It's like a puzzle. Can you make a call given the data?
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, equity markets climbing the wall of worry to record highs. The accommodative Fed Chair Jay Powell's second day on Capitol Hill, and Senator Sanders on top. Democratic moderates squeezing each other out. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Wednesday. Here is your Wednesday morning price action. Monday gains, Tuesday gains, Wednesday we advance by 13 points on the S&P, up another 0.4%, all-time highs, and we may well add some weight to that at the open in 2 hours and 30 minutes time. In the bond market, Treasuries lower, yields higher by a single basis point to 161, and in foreign exchange, here is a quick look at G10. The euro doing a whole lot of nothing against the dollar stronger against the bulk of G10, including the krona and a Japanese yen. Tom,
whole lot of nothing, but in terms of the good times, we've got the equity markets up. We're not talking enough about that. We'll get to Kate Moore of BlackRock here in a moment. John, so I'm sitting there and I'm going to break. Folks, what you do, they're in your ears and you're going to break, and there's a red headline, and I was going to squeeze it in, but I didn't have time. It's one of the most important behavioral, political, psychological, financial headlines of my lifetime. Greece 10-year yield under 1%.
For the first time
ever. To understand the sweat of Papandreou and his people, the prime minister interview we had in Davos on Greece, the triumph of the Greek people, their institutions to accomplish that is like this bull market. It's just unimaginable.
Yeah, I would broaden it out as well, Tom. It's not just Greek 10-year paper with yields below 1%. U.S. corporate borrowing costs, all-time lows.
Do you impute, Lisa, Greek 1% paper to negative yields in the United Kingdom?
I mean, let's just put this in a perspective. Greece has still a junk rating from all three credit rating companies.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
So this is not a country that is viewed as that much more creditworthy, at least by S&P, Moody's, and Fitch ratings. So you're looking here at a story that's being believed by markets before anyone else. Now, you could say that the rating agencies are just behind, but there is a question here. How many times has this country defaulted? Is this purely an ECB buying bond game?
Well, a couple of things to mention here. It's not much of a debt market. There's still a load of bailout loans that make up the bulk of Greece's debt. The deposit rate of the ECB is still negative 50 basis points. Inflation is low, growth is low. The German 10-year yield is negative 40. So we still trade with a spread of 140 basis points over German 10-year paper. That's worth pointing out. Europe's a really strange story.
We need to do the disclaimer here.
What's the disclaimer?
Bloomberg Surveillance, we had a wedding in the Greek islands in the last 12 months, and that moved the needle on Greece GDP.
Yeah, we got to note about that disclaimer.
A little bit more, a little bit later. We've got a great lineup of guests for you through the morning. We'll be talking about equities at all-time highs, and as we come out of the New Hampshire primaries with Senator Sanders on top, it's on to Nevada. Joining us now, Kate Moore, head of thematic strategy at BlackRock's Global Allocation Investment Team. Good morning to you, Kate.
Good morning.
Just a quick note on politics.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's complacency, comfort, or otherwise, but on Wall Street, no real worries about Senator Sanders. Either it's too early to start caring, they don't believe he can win the general, or they believe if he does, he can't govern and he can't get things done if he's in the White House. Which one is it right now? Too early?
I'm voting for option 3 on this one, which is, there is some skepticism that Bernie's not going to actually, make it through to the White House. But the real conversation amongst market participants right now is that even if he does, he won't be able to enact a lot of the policies that he has laid out. So, we saw this a lot in this administration as well. A lot of talk, a lot of headlines, in this case, a lot of tweets, but, much more challenge actually enacting radical policies than would otherwise have been feared or suggested.
Within the fear is, and I read CBO yesterday, the summary on the new $1 trillion deficits modeled out to 1.3%. And I know the president's budget's a political document, et cetera. Within your thematic investing, do you care about $1 trillion deficits?
We have to think about our time horizon on this one. The deficit certainly matters, but over shorter time periods, and by that I mean measured in quarters, not necessarily years or decades, there are much more interesting themes for us to invest around. Dynamic changes happening across a variety of sectors and in consumption patterns.
I remember late last year people saying that at the end of this year there would be turmoil, volatility heading into the 2020 elections. Right now, it sounds like everyone is shrugging off anything. Nothing matters. The elections don't matter because nothing will get done. The deficit doesn't matter because in the short term, easy money will cure all. What matters? What's the sort of potential sort of downside here that could cause some volatility that people are looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing to watch here is going to be whether or not companies are able to continue to generate earnings growth throughout a lower growth environment. I say that because while we do expect that there might be a little bit of multiple expansion in the equity market given incredibly low bond yields, I think the majority of the returns from the equity market this year have to come from earnings. And this is going to be the big question mark. Now, I'm pretty constructive on this. I think consensus actually is more in line, and we're not going to see as dramatic of a downward revisions to earnings expectations as we have in previous years. And I've been pretty encouraged by the stability in fourth quarter earnings, even during a fairly rocky period around trade and concerns around politics. So I don't want to sound Pollyanna, but I do expect that we're going to end the year higher from here. John, are you laughing at me?
No, I'm smiling because when we talk about earnings, I'm just wondering whose earnings we're talking about. Microsoft and Apple right now, almost 10% of the S&P 500.
Yeah. And they matter.
They matter. I know they matter. They matter a whole lot more than they did a number of years ago.
Yeah.
So when we talk about earnings, whose earnings? One sector, a couple of companies, a handful of companies?
Yeah, okay, this is a completely fair point. Another thing I've been focused a lot on is what companies are giving us in terms of guidance, not just for first quarter 2020, but also for full year. And if you look at where guidance has come in, the vast majority of the more positive guidance and consensus is coming from technology and communications and technology-enabled companies across a variety of different sectors. So, you're right to point out some of those big behemoths. They are driving a lot of the bottom line growth. That said, I think if we have stability and growth, low interest rates, and people don't really worry so much, as we were just mentioning, around politics and geopolitics, then there's going to be, I think, a broader swath of consumer companies that hold up. We also like things like consumption demand around home builders, for example.
Mm-hmm. Have you done, and this goes to Ben Laidler being with us very bullish the other day, and James Bevan of CCLA very bullish this morning, and you, I think, have a very constructive tone as well. When you take out the five glory stocks, you X out the trillion-dollar valuations, what's the actual multiple of growthiness out there right now? It's not as elevated as we think, is it?
Well, look, I think people pay up for the liquidity and the balance sheet of some of these behemoths. We know that's the case, but they also, frankly, deserve the higher multiples.
Okay, but the PE on Amazon is 76, and if you take it out, present's 93. If you X that out in 8 other stocks like that, you got a more reasonable valuation, right?
A more reasonable valuation. But Tom, you got to remember, I grew up in emerging markets, and at that time, if you were really valuation sensitive, you would never have owned something like Baidu in its early stages, which consistently traded at 80 times forward. So you have to be valuation aware.
When she brings that up, I didn't own Baidu. Lisa loaded the boat on Baidu.
Oh yeah, clearly. How's that regret room going?
The regret room's going great. We're all cash today with Amazon on its way to a Doug Cassian 5,000.
Well, I'm trying to square the picture that you're talking about here, Kate, with this sort of developing story that we're seeing reflected by bonds and by oil prices. And we're just seeing OPEC just now slashing forecasts for global oil demand, blaming the coronavirus, but oil prices were under pressure anyway. How do you sort of pair these stories of slowing global growth with robust earnings and earnings growth? At what point does this dissonance become too much to handle and one kind of takes the upper weight here?
Yeah, so there's a lot of focus, I think, at the headline level around some of the older drivers of the economy or the older signals we would have. We've been talking a lot about what is oil telling us, what is copper telling us, what are all of the base metals telling us in this environment where people are worried about the growth impacts of the coronavirus. They're not asking themselves, hey, how much gaming revenue are the Chinese tech companies getting as a result of everyone being quarantined at home? They're not asking, what kind of media spend are we we getting as a result of people not being able to go out and spend in retail stores? We are sometimes asking the wrong questions. You remember how much we used to focus on, say, pre-crisis and immediately following the Baltic Dry Index? Is that even relevant anymore? We fall back into these patterns of looking at these indicators or the pricing around certain old economy metrics that I just don't think are telling us where we're going.
Larry from BlackRock emails in, so nice to see that Kate's on today. Kate's not on to talk markets, folks. She is the official Surveillance Westminster Dog Show critic as well.
Indeed.
The Retriever, as you have Cora, made the finals, like the 7 finalist dogs, but the Foo-Foo Poodle took the trophy again. It's an outrage, isn't it?
I don't want to insult the Foo-Foo Poodle owners, but I will say that Retriever should have taken the prize.
It was gorgeous Retriever.
Good-looking dog, beautiful conformation.
What has happened to this 144-year institution that they can't go with Arthur Levis, Labrador Winthrop, or Vet Bill, something normal? Wait a minute, Vet Bill's foo-foo. Oops. Anyways, what happened to a Retriever winning the trophy?
You know, you have a little bias against the popular dogs here. We need to be conscious of the
Springer Spaniels.
I mean, dogs that are amazing pets that are very well owned seem to not really resonate well with the judges. I think that's a little unfair.
I'm getting a comment too from Larry from BlackRock. He's writing in right now, and he's mentioning that he really likes the analysis and thinks that this really affects the broad investment strategy.
It's great. I'm really glad to hear.
Did you really buy a Gucci leash? I mean, Gucci put out earnings today and they killed it. Do you have a Gucci leash?
Cora is not that foo-foo.
Okay.
What I will tell you, she's a big fan of Upcountry. For all of you dog owners who know, she has many ribboned leashes for different seasons.
I can't, and we got the hearts out for Valentine's Day.
We do, indeed.
Kate, thank
Moore,
you.
Thank you for the dog update. Kate Moore of BlackRock. There, John, Westminster Dog Show, big thing in New York.
I know. I'm aware. We have a thing called Crufts back in the United Kingdom.
Yes, you do.
A very similar event.
And now with our news in New York, Michael Barr.
Tom, John, Lisa, thank you very much. Democratic candidates are heading out of New Hampshire today, looking to the next contests in Nevada and South Carolina. Bernie Sanders gets out of the Granite State as the declared winner with 25% of the vote.
This victory here is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
Pete Buttigieg is second with 24%. In a surprise, Amy Klobuchar came in third with almost 20%. Elizabeth Warren is fourth with 9%.
Our campaign is best positioned to beat Donald Trump in November because we can unite our party.
Joe Biden is fifth with a disappointing 8%. Meanwhile, businessman Andrew Yang and former Senator Michael Bennet dropped out of the race. The 4 lawyers who prosecuted Roger Stone have quit the case after the Justice Department overruled them and said it would take the extraordinary step of lowering the amount of prison time it would seek for President Donald Trump's longtime ally and confidant. The president had blasted the original sentencing recommendation as very horrible and unfair. Both he and the Justice Department say there was no communication. The 144th Westminster Kennel Club is history. The dog show at Madison Square Garden.
The best in the show goes to the Standard Poodle.
Yes!
Standard Poodle beat out Vinny the Terrier. I was rooting for Vinny. Conrad, the Shetland Sheepdog, Bourbon the Whippet, that one too, and 2 others to win best in show.
2 others. The Retriever was the 2 others.
Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
John, Crufts, 2019, Papillon. I don't even know what a Papillon dog is. The name of the dog was Forever Young Daydream Believers.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Have you ever seen Best
we
in
do
Show?
better in the UK, don't we?
Yeah, very good movie. Anyways, thanks to Kate Moore of BlackRock as well. Kate Moore up on stocks, futures up 13. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SCI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve
Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential and change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maltesers presents If Dating App Chats Were Real Life Chats.
Amber, damn, you hot. Glad we matched.
Me too. You're definitely my type.
I gotta ask, did it hurt?
Oh, I'll see where this is going.
When you fell from heaven, Amber? Yo, Amber, 'cause you're an angel.
Snore. Ditch the apps this Valentine's and swipe yourself some Maltesers.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Oil, U.S. stock index futures rather gaining, along with European stocks. Crude oil is rallying amid signs the spread of the coronavirus in China is slowing, and investor optimism the global economy can weather the storm. We do check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. And U.S. stock index futures, S&P futures up 13 points, Dow futures up 124, NASDAQ futures up 48, and the DAX in Germany is up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 3/36. The yield 1.61%. The yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.5%, up 77 cents at $50.71 a barrel. And OPEC did slash its estimate for oil demand growth on that coronavirus. COMEX gold is little change at $15.69.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0913 against the dollar. British pound 1.2972 and the yen 109.98. CVS Health is now up 3.3% in early trading after its pharmacy benefit management business posted strong fourth quarter sales, helping fuel better than expected results for the healthcare giant. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Futures up 13. Dow futures up 125. We'll get to that. Things are so busy here, even though the markets aren't nuts. It's like 12 things you need to know. Thank you, Interactive Brokers, for your support. John, I want to fold in here ECB, their limitations, EU slowdown, Greece sub 1%. I mean, to me, it's a toxic soup that Madame Lagarde has to work with.
The good news for central bank officials, whether it's the ECB or the Fed, if there's some good news out there right now, is that despite the weakness in growth, despite the fact we've got a serious growth scare right now, it's that financial conditions are still loose. still loose and still supporting this economy. We see that in the sovereigns in Europe and Greece. We see it on the corporate side as well.
They are loose because they've driven price up, yield to negative rates, which I think everyone listening would say is an artificial construct.
Tom, totally distorted. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it isn't. It's a totally distorted market. We mentioned LVMH out last week, issuing debt to purchase Tiffany, and 2 of those euro tranches had negative yields. Just try and process that a little bit. Making an acquisition.
For Valentine's Day, should we process that?
You and I should make an acquisition, shall we, this Friday?
They're getting more
together
business in their
for each other.
They got a pop-up store at the old Nike building that's doing better than the main store did, the Audrey Hepburn store. You know, where you're looking at.
There is a question, though, here about whether companies are borrowing to actually do things, invest in their businesses that will boost growth. I mean, this has sort of been the theory behind the stimulus to begin with, right? That eventually these companies would actually use the money to increase the growth in the region. You're not seeing that. I mean, industrial production falling off a cliff in December, and then you have, just generally the Eurozone not showing signs of inflation or growth at all.
Jump forward to the third of 5 things you need to know. I mean, the bottom line is I saw a headline in the last 24 hours, share buybacks are up. With the multiple valuations we are, to Lisa's point, John, they're issuing debt. And what are they doing? They're going out and buying back at the margin more shares.
Yields are low, Tom. Yields in the bond market are low. And at the moment, I think in the driving seat is a treasury market with low yields justifying the multiples that we have on the S&P 500 at the moment. Big conversation over the last year. Why is software ripping? Software's ripping because we're in a low growth world, and that's where the growth is
That's
right
where
now.
the revenue is. Yeah.
It's interesting, though, to this question here, how much longer can it happen? Fed Chair Jay Powell yesterday in Congress coming out and actually starting to hint at this sort of idea that we're hearing from Christine Lagarde and others. They're running out of ammunition. I mean, next time that this market does turn, they're already at such low rates. How much more can they actually do?
We say good morning to automaking, Sirius XM channel 119 in Detroit, and of course on down those interstates through the Midwest of the country. A broader discussion, John, off Germany. FT Lex tore Daimler to shreds this morning.
What did they say?
There's no future there. They've got to massively cut costs to right size. And I mean, it's almost a global American, European auto issue.
Yeah.
Well, one line from the article. Daimler's problem, as with certain European banks, is that it has company-specific woes superimposed on industry-wide ones.
What was your experience? I mean, folks, full disclosure, John Farrell grew up in the Detroit of England as well. What was it like seeing the collapse of that in Coventry?
It got totally carved out in the Midlands in the United Kingdom. Totally carved out. A lot still in the north of the country with some Japanese automakers. So still a big presence in the United Kingdom, Tom, with auto manufacturing. But autos right now is just a tough business. You've got to find a DARS partner to try and get costs down. You've got to invest a load of money into the future of electric vehicles as well. And you face slowing sales in places like China, which is the world's biggest car market.
And there's a question, when do we hit that tipping point, right? I mean, especially because this has been ongoing for a long time. And there have been, to this exact point, company-specific woes, Dieselgate, right? Superimposed on industry-wide ones, people buying fewer cars and all sorts of policy issues that have prevented that. But you pair that with the coronavirus and the drop-off in demand and the fact that the super cycle the super cycle of car buying in China falling off a cliff with something of a decline there, you wonder, how do you move forward?
I will editorialize and say, John, I still haven't gotten over getting in the English electric cab at Heathrow.
Very cool.
And the pull down the road, it's the future. I mean, it was like when I was in my grandfather's Cadillac years ago. It was just that.
Yeah.
That pull down the road was extraordinary.
John?
That's what it sounds like, right?
It was gorgeous. It was just like the future.
Thank you.
Speaking of the future, Powell has a future. Testimony yesterday. Headlines trotted out at 8:30. We covered that. Now we do it again, and you just wonder how Chairman Powell deals as central banker to the world right
Day
now.
two. Did you listen to some of the questions yesterday?
I listened to one that was so painful.
We have got to find a better way of doing this semi-annual testimony.
I strongly agree.
The Treasury Select Committee in the United Kingdom has a smaller group of individuals grilling Governor Carney. It's just a much better.
Okay.
There was one rep yesterday who called Ben Bernanke and asked for some clarification as to whether that is the right way to pronounce Bernanke. There was another rep, Tom, who got a photo of the chairman.
Doing it at some party or something.
Bezos's party, and asked him what he was doing there. Then there was another one that was talking about Dow points dropping as
Lisa was at the same party.
It was ludicrous.
Yeah, that's right. I drove there in my electric car. Listen, I do think, look, I knew that this was coming, and you're totally right. And that's why a lot of people do view this as whether or not Jay Powell will blink and make a mistake. And he didn't.
The question I heard that was so sad was one of these hyper narrow questions. Some minion at Richmond in paragraph 3, page 2 said, ... What do you think? If I was the chairman, I'd say, that's a great question. Let me answer it. Turn to, John sitting next to him and take 7 minutes to review the question and come back right before the guy's out of time.
Honestly, though, there seemed to be a dissonance here because people view the Fed as responsible for the job market and bringing people into the job market. And that seemed to be the line of questioning of a lot of the delegates. And he basically saying, guys, we're just doing the best that we can.
20 seconds. John Farrell, your thoughts on New Hampshire? It was a foreign experience.
Biden, this is so tough right now.
Yeah.
His two big winning tickets, as many people have pointed out, electability and popularity amongst minorities, now questioning his electability and now questioning his popularity amongst minorities, with the founder majority owner of this company, of Bloomberg LP, and the parent company Bloomberg News, Michael Bloomberg, taking some of that share of him going into Nevada, Tom.
Yeah, we will see into Nevada, and then the caucus, I should say, in Nevada, and on to the primary in South Carolina. Thank you, Kevin Cirilli, for wonderful coverage. Futures up 13, Dow futures up 124. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
it's time to search out On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
You know what it's like when you can't find your debit card? Panic. That's what it's like. Until you realise, as a Halifax Visa debit card holder, that you can freeze your card on the spot. Control your Halifax Visa debit card with the Halifax mobile app. Easy as.
You can only freeze certain transaction types. Terms and conditions apply. As le boss, I expect only the best for my office. Air conditioning, super comfortable seating, digital radio, and rear parking sensors. From dealing with deliveries to balancing the books, my new Citroën van, my office on the move. Award-winning Citroën vans. Like you, they do it all. With £500 off during the February van event. Citroën. £500 discount inclusive of VAT on qualifying relay, dispatch and Berlingo vans ordered from 1st to 29th of February and registered by the 31st of March. Business users only. Full T's and C's at citroen.co.uk.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We are live on Bloomberg Radio, where equity futures advanced by 13 points. A record high at the close yesterday. Gains on Monday through to Wednesday. We are set to add some weight to those all-time highs, up 0.4% on equity futures. In the bond market, Treasuries just a little bit lower, yields just a little bit higher, up by 2 basis points to 1.62.
James Bevan positive, Kate Moore.
Just too much for you.
I can't pull the trigger.
Too much positivity out there for you at the moment. Here's the price action elsewhere in foreign exchange. The euro just a touch weaker. Euro dollar coming in 0.1%. As the session grows older, the dollar just getting a little bit weaker compared to where it has been over the last couple of days. Outside of that, in commodities, Leitzer mentioning the drop-off in demand that the OPEC cartel expects. Brent crude pushing higher, up by 2% to $55.14. WTI earlier this week trading with a 49 handle, Tom, now at $50.73 and up by 1.6%.
Very good. On the politics of the moment, Jeannie Zena joins us from Iona here, and we're looking at what we saw in New Hampshire. We're looking at on to Nevada, and of course South Carolina as well. Jeannie, lots of talk. Everybody knows the headlines. The ratings I've seen for this political soiree have been off the chart. No other way to put it. What's the backstory last night that wasn't discussed?
I think so much was discussed, to your point, but I do think, number one, that we have to recognize that Joe Biden, I'm in Manchester right now, he left the state very early yesterday in a recognition that things were not going well, and his campaign has a tough 2-week slog into Nevada and then South Carolina. Right. And so, that is a big story. I think, what I really see out there is that Bernie Sanders has really, gotten the progressive vote, and that's pretty much solidified behind him. But it's that moderate vote where we're seeing a battle between Buttigieg and Klobuchar, and I think we're going to see that. But when you put all those together, they do have a lot of energy behind the moderate wing of the party. So the progressives have not quite taken over the party yet.
Yeah. David Plouffe last night over at MSNBC was stunning on the actual machinery of doing Super Tuesday, of doing Nevada, South Carolina, the money it takes to fly bodies around to do this. Who is best positioned, forgetting about Mayor Bloomberg, who is best positioned of these winners in New Hampshire to actually begin the serious campaigning that the former Obama campaign manager was talking about last night?
There's no question that it is Bernie Sanders. He's done this before. He's got the organization. He's going to do arguably very well in Nevada. We don't know about South Carolina because he doesn't hold well with African Americans. But as you open up to Super Tuesday, to your point, none of these candidates, not Mayor Pete, not Amy Klobuchar, at this point have the money, and because it goes from retail to on the air, they don't have the money at this point or the organization to do it. Bernie Sanders does. He can keep going back to those small donors, and he has done that repeatedly to raise millions.
Jen, this was transforming last night about what it actually takes if you're the mayor of South Bend to go out and actually do it. Like, you have to have an Amex card in your hand and a phone, and you got to get from Little Rock to wherever. And we don't talk enough about the actual mechanism.
The logistics. This is why the early caucuses really matter for momentum and to raise money so that you can have this campaign on a much broader scale as things pick up and the year grows older. And Jeannie, I think what is really important at this point, and the team over at Eurasia Group have pointed it out as well, and I know many other people are making this point too, who drops out next is critical for this race. If it is Senator Warren, we know who gets the boost. If it is Vice President Biden, we know what could happen elsewhere. Jeannie, who do you think drops out next in this race, and how important is that?
At this point, I think you hit on the two people that are most likely, which would be Biden or Warren. But again, it's not clear that either one of them wants to, because what do they have to gain by dropping out? So I think it's those two, but we don't know.
Yeah, but wait a minute. If Warren drops out, she helps Klobuchar, right? I mean, in terms of the women's vote, I mean, not to gain, is it selfish to stay in?
Tom, I think a lot of those votes would go over to Sanders.
Well, and this is actually the key question, Jeannie, and I'd love to have you weigh in on that, which is this question, are Warren and Sanders the interchangeable ones here in terms of the populist side, the sort of more socialist Democratic side, or is there a distinction being drawn between the Warren vote and the Sanders vote?
There is a distinction, but I think we have to be clear that Sanders really has the momentum there. He has really consolidated that, though I don't think Warren could take that back at this point. And, I agree with you. She could give some votes. We heard a very nice concession speech for her, giving some praise to Amy Klobuchar last night. But again, it's politics. I don't think she's going to think about it that way. She's going to think about what she loses, because let's not forget, she cannot run again likely. This is likely it for somebody like Elizabeth Warren. So while I do think she or Biden are the ones most likely to get out, I think it's going to be likely after Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think they will push through at this point. But again, let's be very clear. Super Tuesday alone California alone has 4 times more delegates than the first 4 states combined. And that's just one of the states up on Super Tuesday.
The scale is amazing.
Yes, and big wins counting for a lot coming up. That's right, Jeannie.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why this becomes an air war. And to your point, the people who have the funding to do it, as you mentioned, Mayor Bloomberg, let's not forget Tom Steyer, who was out there big in South Carolina, both on the air and on the ground.
Okay, but he's Jeannie, he's a 3% voter. There's 3 this, 4 this.
Hey, Tom, he's got the money to keep on going.
I know, but but is he harming his Democratic Party? I don't mean Mr. Steyer, but all of these people with single-digit numbers, 20 years ago, they would have disappeared, right?
Well, they would have, because that's when the party had the power to push them out. At this point, we've democratized this process to a point where we let the voters decide. And so as long as you can earn the media or you can buy the media, you can stay in this thing. And people benefit from running. Let's not forget. Book deals, contracts, those kinds of things come your way. The name recognition alone is big.
That's why John does
there's
this.
an incentive to stay there.
I do this for the book deals.
No, but Jeannie, there is a larger question here, and this really came up with the first debates. Are there too many candidates still in the race for any of them to really gain the momentum that they need, either with fundraising or with gaining the name recognition?
There's a lot of them in, but I think we are seeing a winnowing, and I hope that by the time we get to this next debate in Nevada, we see that a little further. But to your point, the times have changed from the time we would have just 1 or 2. Look at the Republicans in 2016. That didn't start to winnow really until late in the spring. We're going to see the same thing. And I would just say this does work to the president's advantage, because they have ceded the states that will decide November to President Trump: Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Florida, where he is now, as you know, a resident. They have ceded those states while the Democrats battle it out in states like, New Hampshire or Iowa that do not reflect the Democratic Party at all. And by the way, likely won't decide the election in November. So this doesn't work to the Democratic Party's advantage, and it does work to President Trump.
Jeannie, you make a really good final point, and I want to pick up on that with a final question. You mentioned Mayor Bloomberg, of course, the founder, majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News, sitting out this race and coming up with a different strategy. That's something Mayor Bloomberg has done. And I just wonder, Jeannie, whether the DNC just needs to really rethink this whole process. They've had 3-4 years to do it, and this is what they've come up with, and it's the same old. How much thought do they need to give to this again?
It needs to be completely looked at and completely redone. They are hurting themselves in the process, and that is one thing, whether Mayor Bloomberg gets the nomination or not, that is one thing that campaign has really demonstrated and continues to demonstrate, that this process, if you want to get rid of President Trump, which Democrats all say they want to, this was not the process to do it. And so it is a problem for Democrats.
Really valuable, Jeannie. Thank you so much. Jeannie Zaino, she's with Iona College, of course. We greatly appreciate her perspective and across all of Bloomberg politics. Futures up 12. Dow futures up 122. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report, always brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, whose new school of applied engineering and technology is meeting the increased demand for advanced manufacturing skills. More at njit.edu. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. Documents on Tesla's autopilot driving system, just released by federal safety investigators, reveal a curious detail in one crash of a Tesla Model X that they've been looking into. An Apple engineer who died when his car slammed into a concrete barrier south of San Francisco had previously complained about the SUV malfunctioning on that same stretch of Silicon Valley Freeway. The documents say Walter Huang had told his wife that autopilot had previously steered his SUV toward the same barrier on US 101 that his car later veered into at a speed of more than 70 miles an hour. Antivirus software developer Malwarebytes is reporting that for the first time ever, Mac threats outpaced those to the Windows operating system in 2019. On systems with its software installed, the firm says it detected an average of 11 threats per Mac, nearly double the average of 5.8 threats per Windows PC, indicating Macs became more attractive targets as their market share increased. And that real-life virus from China is further disrupting the tech world. Intel, Facebook, Amazon, and AT&T are among companies that have pulled out of the big Mobile World Congress set to start in 2 weeks in Barcelona, Spain. Organizers have announced plans to keep the event safe, including temperature screenings on attendees, limits on those from China, and recommending no handshakes. The board of the telecoms event plans to discuss possible cancellation during a meeting on Friday. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan, Lisa.
Bob Moon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's get you some headlines worldwide, shall we? From New York City, let's say good morning to Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, John, Tom, Lisa. Bernie Sanders has won New Hampshire's Democratic presidential primary election. Sanders declared his victory is the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump.
Let me take this opportunity to thank the people of New Hampshire for a great victory tonight.
Meanwhile, among Pete Buttigieg's backers, his supporters at a rally in Nashua chanted President Pete after a second-place finish. Amy Klobuchar finished a strong third, giving her campaign an unexpected boost. Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden finished fourth and fifth, respectively. Andrew Yang and Michael Bennet dropped out of the race. China has reported another drop in the number of new cases of a viral infection and 97 more deaths, pushing the total dead past 1,100 as postal services worldwide say delivery was being affected by the cancellation of many flights to China. The National Health Commission said today that 2,015 new cases have been reported over the last 24 hours. Dr. Anthony Fauci is with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He cautions against being complacent.
When you look at the monitoring of infections, you sometimes see it go up and down. I'm glad to see that it isn't greatly accelerating, but the numbers of cases each day are still alarming.
The total number of cases is around 45,000 around the world. Officials in Baton Rouge, Louisiana say they are watching air quality around a massive fire in an Exxon refinery. Baton Rouge Fire Department officials say the blaze broke out late last night and was contained by internal volunteer firefighters at the facility. Exxon reports there were no injuries. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much indeed. It's Wednesday morning. Let's get you some price action. Monday, Tuesday, gains on the S&P 500. Fresh all-time highs. And we might get some more at the opening bell a little bit later this morning in 1 hour and 45 minutes time. Equity futures up by 12 points in the S&P 500. Positive by around about 1/3%. In the Treasury market on day 2 of the Federal Reserve Chair Jay Powell's semi-annual testimony on Capitol Hill in front of the Senate today. Treasury's a little bit lower, yields a little bit higher on 10s by 2 basis points to 162. On a 2-year note, up a single basis point to 1.438%. And in foreign exchange, the dollar just showing a little bit of weakness against the bulk of G10. Against the euro, we go nowhere. Euro dollar unchanged. From New York City this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance, live on Bloomberg Radio.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Charlie Pellett. Brought to you by Grainger, America's trusted source for industrial and safety supplies. Visit Grainger.com. Under Armour is warning of soft 2020 results, and coronavirus is getting part of the blame. The sports apparel company is warning that the coronavirus outbreak in China will mean $50 to $60 million in lost sales in the final quarter of 2020. Both Nike and Adidas have said that the virus will hurt business in China. Nike had to close about half of its company-owned stores, and stores that remained open were operating with reduced hours. And Callaway Golf is another business citing the coronavirus for missed results. Its first quarter and full year 2020 forecast trailed Wall Street estimates. And CBS will make William Hill its exclusive online sports betting and data provider. William Hill is based in London. It goes back to 1934. That's the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Charlie Pellett.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
The UK has now left the EU, and we are in a transition period until the end of the year. Throughout this period, the government will be forging new partnerships with the EU and the rest of the world. This could lead to new arrangements for trade, travel, and business. To find out about the changes and how they might affect you, go to gov.uk/transition.
Where are we?
The New Forest.
But I thought we only had the Mini Countryman booked for a test drive. We can't stay here.
We're not going to.
This isn't exactly what I meant.
Relax. With Mini's new 48-hour test drive, you can use the Countryman for exactly what it's built for. Exploring. Plus, it's an SUV, the largest Mini in the range, so you can pack loads more in.
Great. Where next?
Well, you know how you've always wanted to try kayaking?
The Mini Countryman 48-hour test drive. Visit mini.co.uk to book yours. Mini. Who's in? Test drive subject to status and availability. Terms and conditions apply. Participating Mini retailers only.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Greece, he's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Futures are gaining this morning along with European shares. Crude oil is rallying amid signs of spread of the coronavirus in China is slowing and investor optimism the global economy can weather the storm. Oil is climbing back above $50 a barrel in New York, holding the advance even after OPEC/forecast for global demand. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 11 points. Dow futures up 117. NASDAQ futures up 41. The DAX in Germany's up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 6/32, yield 1.62%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.6% or 78 cents at $50.72 a barrel. COMEX gold is down about 80 cents. It's little changed at $15.69.30 an ounce. The euro 1.0911 against the dollar, British pound 1.2984, and the yen 109.96. CVS Health is up more than 2.5% after its pharmacy benefit management business posted strong fourth quarter sales, helping fuel better than expected results for the healthcare giant. And sources tell Bloomberg that Marathon Petroleum's Speedway gas station division has drawn interest from potential buyers, including the owner of convenience store chain 7-Eleven, as well as TDR Capital. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Very good, Karen. Thank you so much. This is an important conversation, folks. I was knee-deep in the Greek crisis years ago, doing all sorts of interviews with Greek government officials under the stewardship of Mr. Papandreou, and it was very controversial at the time. Far more important is the bond expertise of Lisa Abramowitz and the bond expertise of John Farrell. Of course, the host of The Real Yield, you can see at 1 p.m.
Thanks for that.
We need a sound effect for this.
It'll probably extend the show this week because of Greece. But John, start off here with Marcus on the sheer magnitude and shock of this rate move.
Just unbelievable. The journey's been unbelievable. To see Greek 10-year paper with a yield below 1%. I know Marcus has got a lot to say about it, so let's bring him in. Marcus Ashworth, Bloomberg opinion columnist. He covers our European markets for us out of London. Marcus, your reaction to that print an hour or so ago?
Well, I must confess, I thought I'd seen it before in the context that it actually went below briefly yesterday, and I think it had gone earlier in the year, but obviously fleeting seconds and maybe just on the offer side. So it's finally gone through now. Why has it gone through? Well, very simply, it's because Madame Lagarde of the ECB said that she could see very clearly that Greek bonds would finally be bought by European Central Bank in their big QE programs they restarted again late last year. So the irony of ironies is that investors are underweight Greece because of the whole repackaging, the private sector involvement, which is, the whole big rebundling and repackaging, and it took all Greek debt away from any sensible fund manager, and it's been incredibly hard to trade. There's very little of it. They've conglomerated a bunch of bonds together to create a sort of proper yield curve. Net. Greece is back in the fold, and everyone's underweight it.
Marcus,
yields drop.
You raised a good point, and this is something that John was talking about earlier, the lack of liquidity in the debt. Just to sort of paint the picture more broadly, this country has a junk rating from all of the credit rating companies, and it needs at least one investment grade rating in order to be accepted into the ECB's bond buying program. Is there a sign that one of those credit rating agencies is going to do that? Is that what's sort of supercharging this?
Yeah, well, I mean, DBRS is your chosen one here. They're the ones that kept Portugal in amazingly, where everyone else had cut them well below, several notches below junk. But good old DBRS was the excuse that the ECB was able to use to keep that in the. It couldn't do it for Greece, but it could do it for a couple of other countries. So, look, the point here is that at some point, yes, the rating agencies will formally do it. But I actually think if you look back on, it happened right before the referendum of Brexit, weirdly. So the day before, June 22nd, 2016, the ECB have got out their own way on this. They can actually buy Greek bonds. They don't need it really to be. I mean, obviously it helps. It's going to be a clear vindication, but they can actually buy it if they want to. It's a question of getting everyone on the governing council on board, and they're clearly in the next few months. I think that'll happen. Greece can now fund at will. It can come to the bond markets, and it doesn't even need to. It got given a huge bung by Germany summer of last year, 8 billion more than it needed, and that's kept it perfectly afloat. But now it can raise, come 5s, 10s, even longer, and raise money with ease. So that's why, logically, I think you could
say the ECB can turn around and say, look, this is an investable and a perfectly fluid and open market now, and people will have to buy it because it's going to be part of their indexes.
Marcus, this story in Europe at the moment is utterly ridiculous. You've written extensively over the last week or so about that LVMH bond deal, and you pointed out correctly that 2 euro tranches had a negative yield. This was LVMH borrowing money to buy Tiffany and being able to do so at a negative yield. Marcus, in Europe right now, is the ECB not looking at this situation and thinking, we've pushed this too far?
Quite the reverse. I think that actually, the net average weighted cost, if you swapped it back, I did the math on this, is 0.07 across the whole financing from 2 years to 11 years for LVMH. Isn't that incredible? You can buy Tiffany for free in financing terms, and they raised 10 billion out of 16. It is an incredible thing, and it's going to carry on. I mean, look, Greece, going back to at 3 months, is a negative yield as well. Greece can borrow for negative yields. It is a situation the ECB has created, and they are going to continue with it. They have to. Look, the coronavirus is going to push German GDP even further worse, and simply put, you've got a situation now you're going to have more and more buying, and I think they're going to be talking about cutting rates again.
I don't want to go all Stern Stewart on you here, but, Marcus, you look at NOPAT, you look at ROIC, you look at the EVA spread and the rest on the Bloomberg acclaimed weighted average cost of capital. I mean, it's a fiction. I've got a legitimate equity cost, and the LVMH debt cost is 0.0. That's not in Svibodi 101 up at Boston University. How do we extricate ourselves from this true free lunch?
Because at the moment, the ECB is buying 20% of its QE into corporates.
You don't, is the answer.
It doesn't have enough single A decent credits on it. LVMH, which
Francine Lacroix is not going to get an honest answer on this from Governor Carney on his wonderful exit interview with her. Let's get an honest answer from Marcus Ashworth. This is not healthy. This is not good. What's the ramifications when the free lunch is over?
Well, I mean, the free lunch can't outstop. It's going to have to be free lunch, dinner, breakfast, the whole smorgasbord, because the European economy is in a real world of pain. But simply put, they're already thinking, I think, the ECB about cutting rates further. They're going to have to increase buying of corporate bonds and other bonds as well. That's coming down the pipe for sure. But, at the moment, the one thing that's actually worked, weirdly, is the tiering of deposit rates, which is the complicated way, essentially, that the banks no longer actually pay negative 50. They're paying more like negative 10, negative 20 basis points.
I feel better already.
Negative rates don't work.
Marcus, always great to get your
Financial
insight.
Planning with Marcus Ashworth.
Marcus Ashworth there, Bloomberg opinion columnist. And because of the introduction of tiering, of course, it opens up the ECB to take rates even lower than they already are.
Well, I will say about Greece, though, in fairness to Greece, their economy is doing a lot better.
Oh,
this was what you were talking about, Tom. I mean, their GDP is expected to be a 2% increase this year, and that compares to a contraction steadily in the...
I think we need team coverage, guys. I'm thinking late April. Team coverage.
The Minister invited us.
Why?
We can
Mickey Mouse. One of the
grilled
islands.
octopus.
Let's get some price action, shall we? 90 minutes away from the opening bell in New York City. Equity futures up 11, positive a third of 1% on the S&P 500. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey.
Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
Birds of Prey is a fantastic assault on the senses. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey in cinemas now. Certificate 15.
The Dacia Duster has won what car? Best family SUV less than £20,000 for the 2nd year running. Time to roll out the fanfare. Starting from only $10,995, our prices are pretty modest, just like our celebrations. Visit dacia.co.uk to find out more about our range of award-winning cars. Dacia, you do the maths.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
The comedian Louis C.K. is on tour now for the first time since his sexual misconduct against other comedians was brought to light. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with critic Hilton Alls about how Louis C.K. is addressing the issue in his act or not addressing it. And more broadly, we'll talk about when and how a disgraced performer should come back before the public. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
First time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on trade deals.
In many of these countries, we're still seeing people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene with Lisa Abramowitz. Thrilled you're with us. Futures green on the screen, up 12. Dow futures up 119. Coming up, the must-listen interview of the week if you need the courage to be in the market and hold blue-chip stocks. I can't say enough about what we're going to hear from Mr. Bevan from London. We'll do that here in a moment. John, I'm looking at the screen. I only did one data screen on television today. Really almost, it's just a quieter churn day to the market.
It's looking good, though. Equity futures up 11 on the S&P 500, positive a third of 1%. Gains on Monday, Tuesday, through to Wednesday as well. Tom, keep an eye on the bond market. Just the last couple of days, a little bit of a lift for yields. Yields up another 2 basis points, 162 on 10s.
What do we see in the spread market as we see, a little bit of lifts in the yield? The spreads are a little steeper, right?
Credit spreads are still doing okay. Off the tights of the year, Lisa, a little bit wider, but certainly at these levels, in and around 350 on high yield. I think a lot of people would step back and say things still look rich, don't they?
Yeah, well, especially when you look at the investment grade bond market and borrowing costs reaching all-time lows. This even has to do with 2013, ahead of the taper tantrum. People were worried about a bubble. We're below that now.
Are we seeing it in the housing market? Are borrowing costs down in the housing market?
Not only are borrowing costs down, but there is a report about consumer debt in the United States and how it's reaching a record high of more than $14 trillion, led by new mortgage origination.
Yeah, that's Farrow.
You're seeing, yeah, that's right.
Farrow's over in York. What's it, York? It's so far east. It's like East River.
He's buying a house in the suburbs.
It's like above FDR.
He wants to have a garden.
I'm getting ready to retire.
He wants a garden.
I'm done.
Sheep.
I'm retiring from surveillance before I'm pushed off
no, you're not doing the Babe, the farm, the English farm thing. Like
buying a couple of pigs.
That's actually what he wants. I cannot imagine he's heading to pigs.
Have a great time.
Best part of the show today is we're Premier League free. There's no decent games this week for the fourth week in a row. I looked.
Thank you.
Did you check? You checked before I checked.
Next derby game is Chelsea-Man U, and it's like 2 weeks away.
It's not a derby, but it's a big game.
Is that a derby?
No.
Didn't know that.
Chelsea's West London, Manchester's in the north of the country. It's an important match.
I didn't know that. Okay. Futures up 12. Dow futures up 122. Right now, let's do this. Let's get into an important discussion on how you find comfort in, just like in the old days, owning a stock. James Bevan runs very serious money for CCLA, conservative money, boring money, and they're, they got all the fears and the worries that we all have, and yet he says stay invested. State the bull case now, James. State why quiet money can be comfortable in equities.
I begin with the premise that the benefit from equity ownership is about long-term participation in an underlying business, paying a sensible price, and therefore, in effect, expecting an earn-out. And I look at the price that you receive in terms of the forward risk premium for being in the equity market. I simply think that's too high. And in the context of the alternative places where one can have one's money, the cash markets, the bond markets, the real estate markets, I think the valuations of equities are too low. I think valuations should be materially higher, and therefore people should sit with equities.
Okay, this is really critical, James. I'm going to go all CFA on you here right now. In a dividend discount model, there's an x-axis, and you go out 5 years, 7 years to a terminal value. Have we extended out our timeline to value equities? Are we looking out instead of 3 years, 5 years, or instead of 7 years, are we valuing out 10 years now because of this great disinflation?
Tom, what I think any investor can do is they can lift the consensus numbers from IBS or any other entity. Bloomberg runs a very good service of consensus data collection. And take the 5-year market numbers and then assume that after the first 5 years, companies get linear participation or in nominal economic growth. So that's then the terminal growth. If you then tot up all those cash flows and say, what's the discount rate that takes those cash flows back to today's price? Well, that number at the moment is 6.3% in excess of the long government bond yield. Now, that to me is a huge payment for risk. Mm-hmm. I think that we can also consider what is the fair payment in the context of lead indicators and current credit spreads, and I think that's no more than 5%. So I would be expecting the discount rate, in effect, to fall because prices have risen. So I am certainly expecting that fair value is materially above current prices.
You're getting a clinic there, folks, on institutional equity valuation. Then how can James Bevan buy the marginal share of Amazon with a forward PE of 76?
Well, I look at the valuation of Amazon, and I look through the price earnings multiple to the free cash flow yield and the long-term growth of that free cash flow yield, and I still see a share price that is below what I calculate to be the fair value for the company. That allows me to believe that the so-called very expensive stocks are actually structurally cheap, and indeed are cheap in the context of what people have been prepared to pay in prior peaks of expensiveness. So I've looked at prior periods where growth stocks have done well, so periods of relatively slow growth, low inflation, low money rates, and I see valuations that have ranged between 45 times and 72 times. And on that basis, Amazon is demonstrably cheap. The second issue is that if you deduct the relatively expensive 6 stocks that dominate market indices, the valuation of the residual S&P 500 falls from 18.5 times, that many have described as expensive, to 16.7 times, which I think looks arguably way too cheap in the context of the growth that's available from so many other world-class companies in that market.
John, I have to translate. Spot is for point for our American viewers.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you very much, James. I always forget that it doesn't translate well into America. Let's move on. Linked to everything you've said, how great is the pressure to own US mega cap stocks right now?
I think that for short-term performance, the UK mega caps are absolutely supported by a following wind. I mean, when one looks at the financial results that came out for the big 5, excluding Netflix, I look at a beat against Q4 earnings forecasts that is something in the order of 14.3% earnings surprise, with 21.5% in round figures year-on-year earnings growth. That compares with the rest of the index, excluding those top names, with surprise of 3.9%. And earnings growth of 0.5%. Now, why would one not want to own fabulous growth companies on valuations which are arguably reasonable? If you subscribe to the view that I do, the bond yields are staying low, cash rates are only likely to get lower in the context of what Jerome Powell has been saying, and that both growth and inflation are going to remain very modest.
James, there is a question about whether the Fed model still works, whether bonds and stocks can be compared in the same way. And this is a question that is increasingly important as people use the low bond yields to justify their purchase of stocks. I mean, at the end of the day, an earnings yield is not the same as the yield or the coupon that you get on a bond. And there is risk embedded in the stocks that is not there for bonds.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I do think that there has been a significant shift in the way that the market thinks about debt and sustainable levels of debt interest costs. And if you subscribe to the view as peddled by the central banks that sustainable equilibrium bond yields are lower, it doesn't mean you're going to make more money because those bond yields are stuck at those ultra-low levels. So the journey of making the path to those lower yields, which obviously means higher prices, is over. But it does mean that the arithmetic in favour of equities is thoroughly supported and well-placed.
Hey, James, always great to catch up with you. Really, really thoughtful, insightful stuff on some of the big names in the US equity market after a monster rally through last year that continues into this year and climbs a wall of worry. James Bevan there, CCLA Investment Management Chief Investment Officer.
Just extraordinary here to get the window into how pros discount the future, whether in bonds or equities.
But how much are we discounting future returns? And this is one of the key questions, especially given the pensions, the insurers that have to count on a certain.
He gave you two numbers, and it's brutal.
It's brutal, but you're basically front loading the returns. Right? I mean, and it's sort of, this new valuation may work, but it means that returns are going to have to be a lot lower going forward.
Have we seen the membership weightings, Tom, on the S&P 500
haven't
right now?
Haven't
Just
looked.
Unreal. North of 5% for Microsoft. Yeah. Apple in at around 5%. Amazon 3.2%. Alphabet a similar weighting. Facebook 1.8%. Yeah. Just this big group of mega cap stocks just dominate this index.
I love what Chris Morangi said. He said they're nation states. They're like Venice, if you will, from the 1400s.
My cynical question is, at what point do they become a systemic risk? I mean, if there's an issue with one of them, it becomes a huge issue for everybody.
Yeah, but that's what we try to do here. When we invented this years ago, folks, and it's something that we've really tried to pull forward, to have Marcus Ashworth there on bonds and then James Bevan on equities is just fabulous.
Really, really smart stuff, and much more still to come throughout the program here on Bloomberg Surveillance. A little bit later, we'll be catching up with Neil Shearing of Capital Economics. Looking forward to Chairman Powell Day 2. We'll do that a little bit later. Let's take the opportunity to get you some news worldwide, some headlines from elsewhere. From New York City, let's say good morning to Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, John. Tom, Lisa. Progressive Senator Bernie Sanders has won New Hampshire's Democratic presidential primary election. Pete Buttigieg finished second. Amy Klobuchar told her supporters her surprise third-place finish shows her campaign is defying the odds. Elizabeth Warren was fourth, with Joe Biden fifth. He has his work cut out for him heading to South Carolina and Nevada.
We saved the automobile industry, passed Obamacare. We stopped insurance companies from discriminating against people with pre-existing conditions. And on top of all of that, we built an economy that Trump is bragging about.
Japan's health ministry said today that 39 new cases of a virus have been confirmed on a cruise ship quarantined at a Japanese port. The update brings the total found on the Diamond Princess to 174 cases. Dr. Anthony Fauci with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases says the number of confirmed infections of the coronavirus, now more than 45,000 globally, doesn't include people who may have the virus but haven't gotten sick.
The overall mortality, counting just the people who come to the attention of the medical community, is about 2.4%, which is very high compared to something like seasonal influenza, which is only 0.1%.
More than 1,100 people have died from the coronavirus. All 4 U.S. prosecutors who backed a long prison stay for Trump ally Roger Stone have resigned from his witness tampering and obstruction of justice case. It's a stunning rebuke to a Justice Department that cut the recommended sentence by more than half after a critical tweet from the president. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much indeed. The next couple of days for the economic data is shaping up as follows. We are light on the slate today. Tomorrow we'll get CPI. Yeah. And then on Friday, Tom, US retail sales, big data point.
I did not know that.
Big data point. Worth a look.
Retail sales on Friday.
Coming up this Friday for the month of January.
That would be February 14th. Retail sales.
Are you haunted by some Valentine's experiences? Have you told the other half that it's going to be freezing and she's not going out on Friday?
It's seamless.
Does she know that yet?
What are you getting vet bill?
Vet bill gets inundated. He's got a girlfriend downstairs.
Vet bill's got a girlfriend?
What's vet bill getting his girlfriend?
I don't know. I think he's going, like Fanny Farmer chocolates, French mints.
Nice.
Whitman's,
From New York City, for our audience worldwide, this is Bloomberg Surveillance, live on Bloomberg Radio.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention.
Search Jaguar E-Pace.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. 8:17 on Wall Street, and futures this morning are moving higher. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. U.S. futures are holding on to their gains since the last time we spoke, with Dow futures up 140 points. S&P has gained 14, while NASDAQ futures rise by 49. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.63%, gold trading lower by 4, and Shanghai rose 0.9% overnight, while European markets are also trading higher, led by gains in Germany and Italy. Back in the U.S. on the economic front, at 2 o'clock monthly budget statement. After the bell last night, Lyft revenue beat the highest estimates. And regarding some of the earnings this morning, CVS beat estimates and Shopify beat sales estimates. Also gave an optimistic 2020 forecast. Shares are up 8% in the pre-market. And wrapping things up, Qualcomm was raised to outperform at Daiwa. Under Armour cut to neutral at Piper, and Cardinal Health raised to equal weight over at Morgan Stanley. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. John Farrow, Lisa Bramowitz, and Tom Keith, thank you for being with us. We're supposed to do politics here, but Kevin Cirilli, I want to talk to you first about this uproar at the Department of Justice. Let me cut to the chase. Do you expect, or does your reporting suggest that more prosecutors will resign?
Oh, wow. Listen, I'm going to be level with you. I haven't really given that much thought. I haven't checked in with my sources on that front because I've been up here in New Hampshire. But, you know, I mean, I'm going to level with you, Tom. I haven't really checked in with my sources.
I mean, this is a huge deal, isn't it? I mean, I know it's got the distraction of New Hampshire. Lisa, I think it's just a huge, huge deal.
This is one of the biggest crises for Bill Barr, the Attorney General, that he is possibly facing. We've got 4 resignations of the chief prosecutors on the Roger Stone case after there was an abrupt about-face with the recommendation of the Department of Justice and how much time Roger Stone should have. And there is a question, what does this do to career prosecutors and career people within the government?
And Lisa, I know you've got some familiarity with this to say the least. Kevin Cirilli, Department of Justices are always fractious. What would a President Sanders or a President Klobuchar or the next Republican president after Trump, what do their Department of Justices look like versus what we have now?
Well, you know, it's a great question, Tom, and it came up a little bit at the last debate here in the New Hampshire primary when you had all of them saying that it would be a return to sort of the older tradition of Washington. But, you know, I think it's important to note that the president feels emboldened following his acquittal, and that's why you're seeing him do this. And quite honestly, he doesn't really feel that there would be any repercussions.
Is he going to do a road show out in Las Vegas Saturday, February 22nd? I mean, he went up to New Hampshire and did a Trump Love Fest. Fine. Is he going to go out to Nevada and then over to South Carolina to counter program again?
You know, it's funny. I bumped into Maggie Haberman in the Bedford
the Bedford Ritz-Carlton. We know, Kevin.
There's it was actually Bedford High School at the polling location. And she had a scoop the other week in the Times where she said that Trump's going to, even after a second term, that he would continue to hold those rallies. Yeah, he loves those rallies. I mean, he was rallying here in New Hampshire, and they love those rallies. But this is what people, I think, in the press, we forget. Those rallies are important, number one, for the free earned media, but also for the data collection. Every person who attends those rallies, they get all of that data analytic information on them, and they're able to identify them. And those rallies are really a drawing source, Tom, for folks who traditionally have never voted voted in the past.
John, that's like the surveillance rallies that we have where...
Oh, so well attended.
Oh, I'm not invited?
Kevin, we'll get you to the next one. We'll get you to the next one.
We'll do it at the St. Regis in Washington.
Can I sleep deprivation at all?
The president for 3 years has been running a national campaign in swing states, and these campaign rallies have been so well attended. Kevin, delicate question for the former Vice President Joe Biden. What needs to happen for him in Nevada and South Carolina? Nevada, February 22nd, the 29th, for him to even show up to Super Tuesday.
He's got to win. I mean, and this is, we've talked about this online, offline. This is why Iowa and New Hampshire matter. For everyone out there saying they don't matter, here's why they do. Is because Joe Biden lost. And because he lost, we're all having conversations about the viability of and the strength of a longer-term campaign. He was once seen as the invincible candidate. Iowa voters said he's not invincible. New Hampshire voters said he's not invincible. And that's why I am very cautiously not predicting that there would be some type of contested or brokered convention where there would be a fight. Because for as complex as the process is, it's actually pretty simple. You get the most votes, you're seen as a winner.
Kevin, I'm wondering about turnout. New Hampshire, I believe, had record turnout. How important is that? How much does that sort of foretell a big momentum for the Democrats?
I mean, joking aside, it's bad news for Iowa again because they didn't have turnout.
Come on, Kevin, the caucus theory is dead. Is Nevada going to be as messed up as Iowa?
No. I mean, who knows? But I mean, I'm not going to predict that front. But in terms of turnout, I think that there are, Tom Perez is breathing a sigh of relief. How about that? The chairman of the Democratic Party and my sources at the DNC, they were under a microscope in
Kevin,
the past week.
I've got to ask the question. You bring up Tom Perez. How many people have asked in the last couple of weeks why this guy still has a job?
Well, he can't. Okay, so this is a great question, Pharaoh, because think of it this way. Do the Democrats want to have an election for the chairman of the party in the midst of a fight for who's going to lead the party? And traditionally, whoever becomes the nominee, it gets to put in their person as the head of the party. And so that's why you're not, but that's a great question, but it's why you're not seeing forceful calls for his resignation.
Kevin, it's Mr. Farrow.
Sorry, Mr. Farrow. I apologize.
Come on. Don't even fake apologize for that one.
He's not going to get in trouble with that. Kevin Cirilli.
Thank you.
Kevin Cirilli, part of the NASA sleep
deprivation. The guy's hardly had any sleep, and we're going to pick him up on that. Our chief Washington correspondent joining us from New Hampshire.
We'll never, ever return after that one.
Terrific work by Kevin. There, I'm not an expert on this, but I remember the charm of the caucuses, and it was mom and pop in the living room with 12 other people in Iowa with couches and serving popcorn. It's gone.
It's not about charm and romance, Tom.
Gone.
It's about winning. It's an election.
When it's talking about winning, Bernie Sanders, I think that this is sort of the most interesting development coming out of New Hampshire, where he is all of a sudden being considered the most viable candidate, potentially, not necessarily in electability, but in terms of gaining the nomination. And you have all these stories about how Wall Street's trying to figure out what this means. You've got, of course, Lloyd Blankfein coming out on Twitter saying that the Russians will love Bernie Sanders. Did you see that?
I did. What did you think of it?
I think it's so interesting how much his Twitter feed has changed since he stopped being the CEO of Goldman Sachs.
I think once you've left the C-suite, I think you're allowed to say different things. Rather like the Fed chairs, when they step down, they start telling you what they really think.
Just think if you and I ever left.
Oh, God.
You'd say what you really think about what? you and I say what we really think about everything anyway.
100%.
Isn't that the part of the charm of this program?
You reject that.
That is not true. Futures up 14. Futures advance. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and